All right, welcome everybody. We're going to call to order the combined local subdivision tax incentive meeting, UND Ray Richards Golf Course Redevelopment Project. It's quite a mouthful for July 14th. So we'll call that meeting to order. I'm just going to make a few comments about how we're going to operate this, and then Sherry will call the roll. We're going to go through the whole project, or the whole presentation first, and then we'll have the public comment period, and then it'll be up to our different tax entities to speak. We'll kind of still formulate it like under Robert's rules, so we'll still recognize folks, have them talk, and that way we're not talking over each other. If you have any questions, write them down, hold them kind of till the end so we can get through the whole presentation. It might get answered later, it might not. But other than that, the public comment period will be 5 minutes. We just ask that you give your name for the record, so that helps Sherry when she does her minutes. Otherwise, we'll have 5 minutes, and as many commenters as are here to speak will be great. So with that, anybody got any questions off the top? All right, so Ms. Lundmark, why don't you go ahead and call roll for the whole bunch? We got a crowded crew up here. I think Mr. Manley and Mr. Clevens got a little extra room down there, so it worked out well. And Ms. Flynn, so there you go.
All right, so we'll start with City Council. Weigel. Olszewski. Here. Berg. Here. Salentini. Here. Friedolfs.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Veen.
Here.
And then Grand Forks School Board. Adams. Here. Baki. Here. Dunnigan. Here. Flynn. Here. Hall. Here. Clavin.
Here.
Kramer. Here. Lund. And Manley.
Here.
Then for County Commission, Birkey.
It's an honor to be back.
Hagan. Here. Hodney. Rost.
Here.
Rusted. I think I see Mark online. So Mark, can you hear us? Okay. That's what I have.
All right, I'll call that quite the quorum we've got today. So with that, Mr. Phelan, do you want to help choreograph from the presentation side of things? And I know it's a long presentation, so we'll get started.
Yes, and Miss Mary Adams, you may want to mute yourself just in case. We're going to start out this evening, if you don't mind. We're going to go through all the presentations. President Andy Armcost is going to start for UND and the development team. And then online is Colby from Baker Tilly. He's going to do a run through his PowerPoint presentation. And then you're going to see Maureen Storstead on behalf of the finance teams, Dan Gostad as part of the legal teams. And we might have some wrap-up comments before we turn it back to Mayor Bochensky and school board and County Commission representatives. So with that, I'm honored to introduce Andy Armcost to start the presentation along with his team.
President Armcost, thank you.
Mayor Bochensky, members of the taxing entity, I don't know what the official title is, the council, the commission, the board.
CLSTIM. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll leave it at that.
Well, it's great to see you all, and thanks for allowing me to spend a few minutes describing and introducing this project, this redevelopment project of the Ray Richards Golf Course. And I'm honored to be here to represent the university, and you'll hear from our development team partners as well here in a moment. And we're really proud of the project that we've created and constructed, and it's been a lot of work, not just by my team and the developer team, but we appreciate the comments and the advice that we've been given by neighbors and citizens within the city of Grand Forks, who have helped us yield what we think is a much better solution and a great project that has been modified from the original proposal that we put forward to begin this journey. So what we're going to present tonight is the result of all the conversations and valued input that we've gotten from the members of the community. The objectives that we set down from the very beginning were the following: that we want to preserve the Ray Richards Golf Course. And this is a course that operates at a financial deficit to the university, totaling at least $500,000 a year. And in the interest of being good stewards of those who support higher ed, absorbing that kind of loss routinely doesn't make sense. And so the effort to redevelop the golf course was an effort to try to reduce that financial burden and to make sure that we could eliminate those operational losses. In addition, one side benefit of this redevelopment effort is to provide a home to both the UND men's golf team and the women's golf team there on the Ray Richards course in a new component, which is an outdoor driving range that we'll refer to as the Top Tracer. And it adds amenities for the Grand Forks community. This is a facility that will be, the entertainment facility will be a nice addition to the 42nd Street corridor, and then the additional housing options that are available on the northeast corner, and you'll see the drawings here in a moment, will be a nice addition as well. And so we're really proud of what we're going to show you tonight, and we're asking for your support for the pilot approval. And I know you're not voting tonight, but this is a chance for us to share information about the redevelopment effort and to answer any questions that you might have. Just to give you a little background on the Ray Richards Golf Course, it was made possible by a donation by the Ray Richards family in 1962 of the land, and then the development of a golf course, which was the intended use of that land as he made the donation. That course opened in 1968. UND more recently closed the course in 2016 as the university explored other options for the use of that land, but it reopened in 2020 under pressure from the state legislature and also from some key supporters of the university. So that reopened during the early days of the pandemic, and it's been operating since. The current project, which is what we're presenting today, involved a number of components. A, the desire to redevelop the land, but B, there was also the purchase of the northwest corner of the golf course by the Department of Transportation to support the 42nd Street underpass that's supported by the federal government and also state DOT. We issued a competitive RFP for the development project, and again, this included both a housing component and the Top Tracer, so the outdoor golf component that we'll speak about in more detail. And we also have a great video that will show you of what the conception is of this particular project. Again, as I said earlier, we're proud of the work that we did in cooperation with the community. I know City Council had commented during the zoning discussions about their strong reaction and their positive support for the work that we had done to arrive at a solution that involved a compromise in the original design. The original design involved exactly 300 units, apartment units, and we, through compromise, reconfigured the development and also lowered the number of units to 169. And the consequence of that is something that was more palatable for the local community, but it meant that the university, in our goal to be net zero in terms of eliminating the operating loss, it meant that we might have to give on that and actually keep investing some amount into the operation of the golf course. So the land was rezoned for use under planned unit development in February. And as we go into this process, I just want to let you know that we did have a local contractor ready to go to begin the reconstruction of the golf course, which we have to do simply because of the sale of the land for the 42nd Street underpass. And then also the anticipation of this project required reconfiguration of the golf course as well. We've put that on hold. And the reason we put it on hold is we need to see how this discussion plays out and whether or not we have the support of this combined commission to support the pilot incentive for the project. So we put that on hold, awaiting the outcome of this decision. So what I'd like to do is turn over the microphone to our development partners, represented by Steve Burian. He's going to go into more detail about the finances of the project. We'll see a video of what the project looks like as well. And then I'll return and summarize the benefits that will come both to the community and to the university if the pilot is approved and we're able to proceed with this project. So let me turn it over to Steve Burian.
Mr. Burian, please, and thank you for being here. I know you had some illnesses in the family and some bad medical stuff, but thanks for taking the time to be here, so appreciate
Heading
that.
straight back, but I ran out of clothes and I ran out of thyroid medicine, so I'm going to make the loop, and it all worked out well. Thank you. I'm going to give this a try. Mayor Boczynski, Chairwoman Hagen, members of the Grand Forks School Board, members of the Grand Forks County Commission, and members of the Grand Forks City Council. My name is Steve Burrian with Burrian Associates, and as President Armacost indicated, I'm one of the members of the development team. It's a relatively complex development team, including Burrian Associates, TL Stroh, community contractors, Dakota Commercial, Mac Construction, and then we also have Mark Johnson, who is a UND alum and a longtime pro at the Fargo Country Club, as well as the majority owner and a former manager of the Sweet Shops down in Fargo, and now the pro at the Country Club at Oxbow. So he has a real good sense of both outdoor golf and the amenity that we're looking at. He's a part of the team as well. When the request for proposal came out, and President Armacost wasn't quite candid about that, it was actually a request for information and 2 RFPs. So we've competed 3 times for the same project, but we did win all 3 times. So here we are. We knew that we had to roll up our sleeves and try to address what was best for the university, best for the community, best for Grand Forks Public Schools, and best for the park board. We utilized our experience on private-public partnerships with MV1, or what we call the HISLOP, which is the new home of the UND Athletic Department, and then some market-rate apartments, as well as Memorial Village 2, or the Field House, and that's the new home of the UND bookstore and some commercial businesses, as well as some additional market-rate apartments. And then as part of that project, and I missed this last night, President Armacost reminded me, we also had built the softball diamond for UND. And I think much like the indoor track and field and football field, the softball complex has quickly become an amenity that not only serves UND, but serves the community and the state and the region very well. And we hope that this project will do the same. If you look at forward of the logistics of the project, the developers will be leasing the ground from the University of North Dakota, and then we will sell a condominium to UND for their particular club area for UND Golf, and the rest of it will all be operated by the public sector, putting the project on the property tax rolls. And so then, as we looked at it, we looked at both providing the housing that they sought, we looked at providing a top tracer amenity, all as one project. But the other thing that we're doing that I didn't discuss very well last night was we're also proposing to run the Ray Richards Golf Course. And it was kind of the last thing we were looking to do, to add a golf course to the mix. But when President Armacost mentioned that he was trying to get to 0 in terms of the net loss for the golf course, in addition to the land lease we'll be paying, we were looking for other levers that we could pull. And we realized that if our management team already has experience with indoor and outdoor golf, why not look at some of the synergies that we could have in management of the golf course and look at some of the synergies we could have with operations of the golf course? So we asked if UND, if that was something that they would consider, and they added that, and those were, both of those synergies were 2 significant kind of chunks that we were able to take away from that over $500,000 loss that the golf course was experiencing. We've put together a video to best demonstrate this, and so if I may, I'm going to play that video.
The Ray Richards Golf Course Redevelopment Project provides the support needed to preserve a true community gem while continuing the legacy of the Ray Richards family. Now, together, we usher in the next chapter, honoring that legacy of the course while creating a bold vision with new opportunities and benefits for the Grand Forks community. With UND retaining ownership of the land, this transformation reimagines the property as a year-round destination, blending recreation, residential living, entertainment, and vibrant community spaces into one unified development. At its heart, the beautiful 9-hole golf course will be preserved and reimagined, remaining a place where golfers of all ages and skill levels can play, learn, and connect. Surrounding the course, the new Greenview Living Complex will help meet a critical housing need while offering scenic golf course living options for residents of all ages. As a new addition to the 42nd Street Entertainment Corridor, a new top tracer facility will elevate the golf experience, creating a year-round venue for recreation and will provide entertainment options, all while attracting new visitors to Grand Forks. It becomes an important new home for UND Golf and creates new opportunities in our community for school groups, field trips, and coordination with local high school golf teams. The timing for redevelopment is right. Strategic infrastructure improvements, including the 42nd Street underpass, make this the ideal moment to enhance the course, support its continued success, and drive economic development while generating new tax revenue from land that currently provides none. We look forward to the future of Ray Richards Golf Course. It's more than redevelopment. It's an investment in strengthening the partnership between the University of North Dakota and the Grand Forks community.
So although that video, I think, does a pretty good job of speaking for itself, I'll just provide a few more details before I wrap up. As the video noted and President Armacost noted, you can see the carve out in the northwest corner of the Ray Richards Golf Course for the handle that will be added as the new underpass for 42nd. And then as we went to look at the housing solution, we proposed putting that in the northeast corner as shown here. That housing solution will border both Demers on the north and 34th on the east. We were originally looking at putting almost 300 units in two different complexes, but as we supported President Armacost's work with the neighborhood, we limited that to a single building way on the north end and limited that to 169 units maximum in order to keep the density down in that area. The apartments that we're looking at will be market rate apartments, so they'll be available for all to rent. And we do anticipate it being an above average apartment complex with quite a few amenities, including indoor parking underground, pickleball courts. In fact, I'll stress that the blue on here is not a pool. The blue is just pickleball courts. Outside seating, lounge gathering, a fitness area, and then we hope to preserve the putting green that UND's had historically there as a practice green as part of our development as well. We had originally then had planned for this golf amenity to also be in this same area. The driving range was previously located there, and so it's kind of an obvious spot to put a driving range initially. With the pushback from the neighborhood and with maybe even a draw to 42nd Avenue, we worked behind the scenes with President Armacost to revisit this, and we're now proposing to put the top tracer amenity in the home of UND Golf down in the southwest corner of the facility, or the course. It'll be located on 42nd Street, and we've worked with the city and the DOT to make sure that we have ingress and egress for that. Right now, we're thinking about a building somewhat similar to UND or to Sweet Shots down in Fargo, but instead of three levels and 60 bays, we're right sizing it for the community. So we're looking at a 2-level building with 30 individual hitting bays that we're looking to include. We are also planning to have a year-round asset in terms of a restaurant and bar, and we'll be able to extend that out to the amenities out on the golf course. And then when I mentioned that we're going to have the synergy of operating both together, we will run the clubhouse out of this facility as well as the home of UND Golf. Speaking of UND Golf, when you walk up to the facility, on the right side will be Top Tracer, on the left will be the condo that UND is looking at purchasing as part of the project. And it really is meant to take the golf program to the D1 level, much like you've seen. You know, we have outstanding hockey facilities, we have outstanding football, basketball, softball, indoor and outdoor track. Ken, we got that taken care of. And so really, this is one of the last programs that doesn't have that nice space. And so if you look at the right picture, here's what we're envisioning, kind of a 2-level facility with an open area for their indoor practice. We'd include lockers, meeting room, spaces for coaches, spaces for the students, and then that short game hitting area, and then some dedicated access to hitting bays. As a bit of a departure from last night, Mark Johnson, who I introduced at length, is on today. If we can get the technology to work, Mark, could you just offer just a few comments about how you've been involved in something like this in the past and how you see it working in Grand Forks?
All right, was Holly able to get him over as a panelist?
I talked to her to make sure the video works, so I thought that's already pretty good.
Okay, she said you just need to start talking, so.
Mark, can you talk? Are you muted? Well, I
You
guess,
can presume he was going to say something
right.
amazing.
He was going to say something really favorable.
All right.
I guess, the bottom line is that when you put amenities like this together, what we found, that they found in Fargo is that it extends way beyond just something that people can do to kill time. And for instance, just like many of our spring programs, spring lasts so long that oftentimes the Grand Fargo public school system has actually had their tryouts at Top Tracer for the golf team. And it's my understanding that this Top Tracer technology can actually evaluate 29 different shots for the golfer. And so instead of just hitting into a net and then trying to imagine if that's going to be a good golfer for your program, they use this to do this. The first meet last year was actually held at Sweet Shots in Fargo because the weather just didn't cooperate for other activities. Many times the athletes will then be in some kind of program throughout the year where they come there regularly so they can see, their actual shots from the Sweet Shots. And then when it comes to routine public schools, the middle schools and the senior high will have like a 2-week phy-ed program that they'll bring buses over to Sweet Shots to extend that to the school system. And then for the littles, they oftentimes will go for a field trip over to there. And then Julie wasn't able to be here tonight. Julie Rigg from the Grand Forks, remind me, I did well on the other 3, Visitors and Community Bureau.
Yeah.
And she's noted that lots of times when we have tournaments in Grand Forks, we don't have a place to park the kids with all that energy in between a basketball game or a hockey game or a soccer game or whatever the tournament, baseball, whatever the tournament is. And oftentimes this is a really good outlet where it's an active type event for them where they can sneak over in a controlled environment and do that as part of it. And those were the kind of things that I'm parodying from Mark in his absence.
Steve, can you hear me now?
I can. How did I do?
Well, probably better than I would have. So I apologize, everyone, for technology error on my part, but well done. Thank you for allowing me to be a guest and the speaker here. I apologize. My travel schedule didn't allow for me to be there in person. It's not a reflection on how important and how I revere this project. Just to add on a bit to what Steve spoke to, we find that a facility similar to this that I've had experience designing and building and running and operating in a lifetime in golf, it does really touch more parts of the community than you would imagine. And that's what we've seen. And Steve spoke to the golf programming and kids and park board, senior living centers, fundraisers for community projects and nonprofits. Really, the use of these fleas are beyond what you would imagine, and certainly would add to that amenity when folks come to town or those that are in town that, like I said, are looking for additional amenity, whether it's fundraising or programming for park programs or high schools or middle schools. So we've seen just a dynamic and eclectic group of users at the facility that we have in Fargo. And I just like to reiterate that I fully anticipate the impact of a facility in Grand Forks would be very similar to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and glad that worked out. So in wrapping up, I just have one more slide, if you can indulge me. So the last big thing that the development team had to do to get here tonight is that we had to put a concept together for both components of the project as well as the golf course. We had to put detailed capital projections and operating projections together in form of a pro forma. In doing that, we coordinated very closely with the University of North Dakota to make sure that we were going to be fully responsive to their needs, as well as that we were proposing things that they were going to be excited about. We've also had quite a few meetings with many of you just to touch base and see if we were on the right track. Knowing that particularly the golf element and certainly the housing as well, it was going to be an uphill battle. We did apply for a pilot. In doing that, Baker Tilly had to do an independent review, and we transparently provided a full package to them. So when they talked to you, we really turned over everything we had so they could hit the ground running. We had originally asked for a little steeper return than this, but as we listened to all of you and worked through the process and dialed in our numbers, and President Armacost mentioned about UND stepping up and paying for a bit of a subsidy each year. As part of all that, we dialed the request in at a 90% 20-year pilot for the entire project. And it is a bit of still a stretch for us, but that's what we're asking in terms of the financial. And we have looked at it very closely, and I know some projects have burned you by saying they can't do it and then coming back and miraculously doing it, but we cannot do this without the pilot that we're asking for. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to present. I'm sure I'll be up here to answer any questions you have, and I'll turn it back to President Armacost.
And you managed to get someone to clean the windows right during the ask, huh? That's pretty impressive timing. All right, President Armacost, please.
I felt like we were being de-iced for a moment there. So just a quick summary of the benefits that we anticipate. Of course, generating tax revenue on land that currently doesn't generate any. Even at the pilot rate, there'll be positive flow to your organizations in terms of the tax revenues, both property tax and also sales tax. It preserves this course, this icon of our community, and allows us to operate it in a manner that would be consistent with a functioning golf course. And the additional entertainment option, we think, is a powerful addition to the 42nd Street corridor. Steve mentioned it, but the support to the public schools, the ability for not just golf teams, but high schoolers and middle schoolers and even younger students to come out and use a facility like this could be inspiring and also just simply enjoyable. But the housing option is not, many ask, hey, this sounds like more student housing for UND. And this, as Steve mentioned, it's market rate housing. It is intended not to support students, although students could stay there. But it's intended for professionals. It's intended for military members out at the base. It's intended for a wide swath of people who need another housing option in Grand Forks. And the last bullet, I think, is truly important. Just the way that other projects have connected UND to the local community, this project has the ability to do exactly that. And we're proud of the design. We're proud of the opportunity that it presents to offer something we think is truly special for the city of Grand Forks and the surrounding communities. I had one final slide that I'll share, and and I've made this caveat. A lot of people have asked this question: what if the incentive is not approved? And Steve just mentioned this as well, that if it's not approved, it's not an affordable project, and we would have to pause the efforts on this and re-examine what the future of the golf course might be. And this does include, and this is not intended as any type of threatening statement, but one reality is certainly that the golf course is no longer affordable, and that land becomes something other than a golf course. But I don't want to leave on that negative sounding note and saying, listen, this is some kind of ultimatum. It's not at all. This is an exciting project. We worked for months with the developer, with the local community to figure out what project would work. How could we redevelop this land and use it for those positive outcomes that I started the presentation with? We have a great partnership with the developer, but just as important is our partnership with the community. And we wouldn't put this forward if we didn't think there were positive benefits to the local community to execute this project. And as the rest of the presentation unfolds and you hear from Baker Tilly and you hear from Maureen Storstad, there'll be a lot of numbers thrown around. And I want you to focus on the Baker Tilly analysis really closely, especially when they talk about the return on investment, the IRR, the internal rate of return. What they'll tell you is that without this tax incentive, without the pilot, this project is not viable. It doesn't have a sufficient return on investment to justify us going forward with it. So they will reiterate what I've just said. And what Steve said, it's not an affordable project. And if we change the amount, if we go below a 90% pilot, the same argument is true. So what we're asking for, we've given on the university side, the developer has also given to to make sure that the financial viability of this project happens. But in order to make it happen, we definitely need the support of a 90% pilot. You'll also hear from Maureen. You'll see how much revenue is generated from the project. And what we're talking about is an additional $2 million in the coffers by the end of the 20th year of this development. And this is much greater than the alternative, which is $0 if we did not do the redevelopment effort. So I just want you to focus on those numbers and know that what they're about to present backs up the arguments that we've put forward. But I need to leave you with the excitement that we all have, the university, the development team, about executing this project and really offering something special for the city, the county, and the school district. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to the next speakers.
Thank you to President Armacost, and I'm sure you'll be around for some questions at the end. And thanks again for being here. So we've got item 3 to be Baker Tilly's third-party financial overview briefing. Not sure the
All
gentleman.
right, Colby, I have the
Please.
slides up, and I'll do as I normally do with you. I'll move them ahead as you state.
That sounds like a plan. Thank you all for letting us being here, and to the rest of the team in the city. I'm Colby Krasinowski, Senior Manager with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors, with financial advisor to the city of Grand Forks. And I'm here to present on our independent financial analysis of the Ray Richards project. We can move to the next slide. Right out of the gate, I do like to start at the end a little bit in our presentation to discuss what we are working towards and what we're reviewing for this project. Some of the most salient components that we want to highlight here is this box in yellow on the presentation slides, which is the combined internal rate of return, something Armacost mentioned earlier on. This 6.31% is the return rate for the project with the incentive as it is proposed and requested. In the smaller text, we can see, and in the graph, that the rate of return for the project without the incentive is 3.29%. What is also worth considering here is the bounded area between the red and the teal line. That is the range of returns expected by investors, which is really the benchmark we are judging this project on as to whether or not it's viable without the incentive. A project where a range of return lies in that area preliminarily is viable without the incentive. This one falls well below that range. And with the incentive, it hits just above the bottom boundary of that investor expectation range for a project of this kind. You will see that there are internal rate of return ranges for each of the elements of the project. We necessarily have to review the project within the context of its own industry, but for this project, these parts are intertwined in the ultimate return. So we review them separately. We do present our conclusions as a combined project proposal with the incentive as it's currently proposed. Additionally, what you'll see here is there is a gross value for the incentive over the 20 years at about 10.54 million. We like to list our data in the form of the gross value, but also in the net present value. So what is that cash flow worth today? And that's about 5.16 at a 6% discount rate. So that gives some context for what not only the gross value of the incentive is, but the cash flow and how that factors into the success of the project over time. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So there's been a lot of discussion about the exact composition of the project. A lot of the times we include an overview of the project details as a means to show that what we reviewed is consistent with what's being presented by the applicant. I think in this case, it is, and we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but overall, we reviewed the project details, we reviewed what's being proposed by the applicant, and we reviewed all of the different elements and underlying assumptions for the project as it's currently being proposed, and have a dialogue with the applicant to make sure we have a correct understanding of their assumptions in the data plan project as we review it. We can go to the next slide. Now we can take a little bit of time to talk about the assistance request. The number 90% abatement and 10% pilot has been discussed prior to this conversation. That $10 million in gross value, that is the combined value of each of those pilots, not adjusted for inflation or present valued over the period of the incentive request. Most of that benefit is drawn from the abatement on the housing. whereas about 2.38 million is drawn from the abatement on the golf facility that we've been calling Top Tracer. But that golf bay virtual golfing facility. The city has done a reduction of taxes throughout the life of the incentive, and we list some of that information here, but there is a net benefit to all jurisdictions having this land not only come online from being tax exempt, but also once the incentive period's over, there's additional revenues that go to taxing jurisdictions above and beyond what's currently collected. Which is a slightly unique feature of a project like this, but it's worth noting that there is land becoming taxable, and that is what creates the incentive that is able to be abated for this project. We can go to the next slide. So for the capital stack and project cost profile, we looked at the project features broadly to understand basis of the assumptions and what went into the underlying project. We found that not only were the total cost of construction relatively in line with what we'd expect in the current market, we're also looking at debt and equity ratios that are reflective of the current project cost and interest rate environment. It also speaks to the fact that there is a large construction investment being put into not only the project itself, but improvements to the golf course. So there's a few nuances here that we want to dig into a little bit, because in the case of multifamily, we have a very good understanding of what the market is demanding, both nationally and regionally, for what these projects cost to create. Top Tracer facilities, much like the one being proposed, are unique projects. We do try to look at all available data for highly specialized facilities and projects, but because there isn't a huge pillar of available data on the market and these facilities are specialized, we also sensitize the assumptions we're giving. After determining the components of it that we believe to be well-founded and supportable, we also look at how sensitive the project is to changes in those assumptions, whether it's a lower construction cost or higher revenues. And we're looking for reasonableness. Really, a good rule of thumb for us has been 20% on either side in many of those costs or revenues. If an adjustment pushes the project out of the need for incentive, we go back and have a conversation with the applicant to see if we may be missing something or if there's additional data to pull forward here. We ran our sensitivity and found that the assumptions were reasonable, and even in the case of sensitizing things for lesser known projects, everything still fell in the range that we would expect the market to support and further underpin the need for incentive based on the gap and the ultimate project return. We can go ahead to the next slide. This is where I move a little bit away from the project specific details and more into the methodology, because I think that component of what we do is very important, because our goal is to evaluate these projects and all other aspects from an objective analytical standpoint and contextualize that both in the national market for investor expectations for like projects, but also into the local market as it relates to a variety of different costs and also the project revenues through commercial rents, leasing, and residential rents as well. So the purpose of our analysis is to assess whether the request for public assistance, in this case, the tax abatement, is necessary to support the project's feasibility. That is the but-for question. Would the project happen without the incentive? There's a lot of different ways to approach this. We find the most objective is to put it in the context of the market and put it in the context of where investors would put their money in projects and whether that project would go in a current market under the current conditions. The scope of our review is to review the applicant's performance and materials. The development group and the university provided an extraordinary amount of materials in a timely manner. It was a very thorough submittal of data for us to review, and it allowed us to dive very deeply into a lot of the project assumptions. We evaluate the costs, revenues, expenses, financing, and exit assumptions, and there's a little bit of nuance to unpack here. So we look at costs, we have cost estimators, we have market data, we have a lot of things to lean to when we're trying to benchmark how reasonable a project's costs are. And we have a lot of places to point and ask questions and further dive into details provided by the applicant to evaluate those costs and how reasonable they are in the current market context. From a revenue perspective, there is a wide variety of data that points to what revenues are doing for a variety of different business types, whether it be multifamily or commercial leasing. From the expenses side, there's a wealth of industry data and heuristics that help us understand what these projects look like. And we also try to extract as much detail from the proposal to understand what the different elements that might be driving the ongoing operational costs would be, and put those in context for what the rest of the market is seeing. For financing, I do mention that we use internal rate of return on an unlevered basis to understand the project return and whether or not that return is supportable without the incentive. The reason we choose unlevered or without debt is because it allows us to not only compare the project to like projects in the current market, but it allows us to compare those projects across time in different interest rate environments to look at what returns irrespective of financing look like. It is a place for us to start. We also look at things like the coverage of debt service and the return on a levered basis, which is the return considering financing the project with debt over time. So we have a lot of different ways to approach this. Finally, exit assumptions. Our standard practice is to evaluate the project in the context that's presented to us. Investors will very commonly look at a 10-year pro forma with an exit or a sale of final property that's valued based on its project dynamics, such as net operating income and other elements of the project. We do the same thing. Depending on the structure of the project, it may be 10 or 20 years. If we know that there's a high chance that the project will maintain ownership throughout its lifetime, or if there's other features or constraints to the project we need to keep in mind and are sensitive to the length. But we do evaluate what that hypothetical sale looks like, or what the value of the project is that factors into the ultimate return. We estimate return with and without the requested incentive. That's what allows us to provide the ranges we provided before of that with incentive and without incentive range. And then we compare the returns to market ranges or proxy references. And by proxy references, we mean if there's a very unique project that doesn't have a wide breadth of investor expectations, you look at the nearest neighbor or a comparable range of returns that we would expect for that kind of project and see where it falls in there to give it a near market proxy or a comparison that's reasonable and justifiable. What's not in our scope, this is not a market feasibility opinion. We do not do a market testing or surveying on whether the market will absorb the business proposed. Those are commonly preserved for very specific sort of business arrangements. Multifamily oftentimes comes on the heels of a housing study. We generally do not endeavor into the market study. In this, we are strictly speaking towards financial feasibility, or if the project of it, assuming that it will be absorbed by the market, will be able to support itself as it's currently proposed. It's not a guarantee of the project rents, expenses, financial terms, or exit values. We are using the best information available to us, understanding that in the 20-year horizon for this project is very likely things will change over time, and we endeavor to be conservative and justifiable in the way that we approach that evaluation. We are also not independently appraising the final construction, meaning that we are not using values generated by Baker Tilly as a statement of the appraised value of the project. There are other sources that we need to get appraisals that are consistent with what the local appraised value would be. And the final and probably the most important point to our framework is that Baker Tilly has no financial interest in the project. We are the independent financial advisor for the city of Grand Forks, and it is the city's interest that we are representing when we do our analysis. We can go to the next slide. So our analytical approach I touched on quite a bit earlier. So we evaluate the project costs, which means we look at assumptions the developer and development team has made. We compare those to our experience and the data that's available and determine how reasonable they are. We evaluate the operating assumptions and follow the same methodology, comparing to known sources and resources that are available for us to see how reasonable the underlying assumptions are. We evaluate sales assumptions. This is the valuation and ultimate exit sale metric I'm talking about, where we understand the value of the project and how it factors into the return that investors are going to be expecting. Then we calculate a return on a levered and unlevered basis, using unlevered as the market metric comparison. And then we compare it to market expectations. Our primary governing source is the PricewaterhouseCoopers Investor Survey. We also have other more specialized surveys that cover different geographies and business types that we compare to. And we also look to other project data for projects that we work on in context of the work that we do. we can go on to the next slide. So for the operating assumptions, we evaluated both the expenses and revenues. For multifamily, especially, expenses are a fairly well understood heuristic, and we found that what was proposed by the development group was in line with what we'd expect from market expectations. For the revenue, we're evaluating how rents compare for the multifamily portion in the context of the larger Grand Forks trade area market. And we found that the rents were reasonable, though they do estimate sort of built-in growth in premium as they come online. So they are going to be pushing into that market rate, higher market rate range that you would expect from a brand new development of this kind. We're looking at an average annual revenue growth of 1%, and that stands out as being something that is not reflective of the past few years, but as we go farther and farther back into the history of rental growth in the local trade area, it becomes more and more representative, as well as the fact that this development is going to be entering the market, absorbing anticipated rental growth and coming in at a high rate and creating additional supply in the market. So whereas recent growth trends are higher than 1%, historic growth trends might be slightly higher than 1%. We are also assuming that a building is going to be entering to the market, creating the units, coming in with a rental rate that is already top of the market range, and entering into a 20-year economic period that may or may not include multiple recessionary conditions or other economic interruptions or changes to the micro and macroeconomics of the region that could affect long-term rent growth over time. So we do like to look at a conservative understanding of the local economic circumstances and put those in context to the project, and be very careful not to overestimate or ambitiously estimate growth based on recent conditions. There are other nominal revenues that we found to be in line with the rest of the project. As you move over to Top Tracer, we are looking at the market assumptions and comparing this with whatever data is available to other facilities of its like in the region and in the country. As I had mentioned earlier in the presentation, Top Tracer has less global supporting data. This is where we like to sensitize what is given to us to understand they have a very good year, costs come in lower. What is the band of sensitivity required to actually benchmark a facility like this and understand if these assumptions are reasonable? We found that within a fairly wide band on a reduction in costs and increase in revenues, there was still broad support for the need for an incentive to maintain this facility with the operational figures that we were given, and found that with the best data available, all the assumptions were very reasonable in the operation of the Top Tracer facility. So for return and debt service, I did mention earlier that we begin our analysis with an understanding of what the unlevered return is going to do. That is a return without debt. One thing that we have to be mindful of in the course of doing our work is that debt and financing is a real salient part of economic development, construction, et cetera. So we do try to pay some service to understanding what the constraints of the current interest rate environment look like. One thing that's worthy of note for both the housing and the Top Tracer is the debt service reserves are fairly lean without incentive, given the risk of the individual developments. A debt service reserve at or near 1 for the housing leaves very little room to absorb economic shocks or other circumstances in the economy that could impact the project's ability to pay its financing costs. The Top Tracer, given that it is a highly specialized and somewhat riskier facility on a golf course already currently subsidized by the university, we want to see debt service coverage ratios that are more comfortable to absorb the type of economic shocks that could impact projects like this in the future. And we see that in both cases. The proposed incentive adds between 15 to 20 basis points of coverage on the debt service coverage ratios on an annual basis, which is a lot closer to what we would want to see in a project that is viable. We can go ahead to the next slide. So the operating context. We approached this project understanding that there was a unique relationship between the proposed development and the subsidy of the university that supports the current golf course. And we know that there will be some element of ongoing support from the university. So we're trying to understand exactly what the offset for the benefit this project is. And one important piece that I think is good to let the university speak to, but we've sort of verified how the numbers flow through the model to understand what their level of comfort and their subsidy is that this subsidy is going to take significant load off of the universities to subsidize the golf course by generating a modest project return through a ground lease that then goes to supporting that subsidy for the facility. We can go to the next slide. So in our conclusions, we found that the assumptions for the housing improved very significantly with the use of incentive and put it towards the lower bound of the range of returns we would expect for housing development, but improve them to 6.67%, which is just above the minimum investor expectations. For the top tracer, there was a somewhat narrower band, but the returns were very sticky and they remained in the 4 to 5 range. And with the incentive, they brushed up against the lower range of what investor expectations would be for that 6 to 9%, noting that from the risk profile of the top tracer facility, I think a lot of investors would likely be pushing towards the higher end of that range, given the fact that it's not something stable, well-known, and economically that the economy is aware of and is ready to absorb, like housing. So the considerations for decision makers is looking at these projects and making sure that there's an ongoing understanding of the operational needs of each one and understanding how the incentive affects them. We feel like we have a bit of work to kind of underpin that. The project return is useful, but we are looking at these on a component level. I think the development team has spoken to their plans to help make sure both of these facilities are very successful. And the requested structure ultimately does bring tax exempt land online, gets it developed, and creates an asset that will eventually be taxable in the long run, while also supporting the project in its 20-year life cycle. And we can go to the next slide. To speak a little bit about what we use, these are a few of our sources. We use CoStar, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Investor Survey. RS Means is a cost estimator, which we compare to other projects that we work on a cost comparison basis. And we also take a very close look at the materials provided by the applicant and review those in the context of our own professional working knowledge, but also at the sources available to us. One note, we work closely with the city to understand the projections for the ultimate pilot, for the ultimate tax production, but just like any of the values present in this analysis, we take a lot of consideration to use data that is best and available to us. These values can obviously change based on the specific circumstances of the project and the economics surrounding it. So we really are capturing it at a moment in time to understand it as well as we can. We can go to the next slide. With that, I feel like our analysis was very comprehensive. Happy to answer any questions, and I will be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold tight. We'll have some questions for you at the end. So whatever your hourly rate is, we're going to pay a little more, I guess. All right. Now we've got item 4, Grand Forks taxing entities and financial and legal overview. So for those that don't know, this is Maureen Storstad, the city's finance director.
Yes,
Ms.
thank you.
Storstad, please.
City council members, county commissioners, school board members. Yes, my name is Maureen Storstad. I'm the finance director for the city of Grand Forks. I'm going to keep my comments fairly brief tonight. I have had communication with both Colleen Morstead, the county auditor, as well as Ryan, interim business manager for the school district. Colleen was not able to make it tonight, but Ryan is also here with me for questions as they may come later. But just I wanted to hit a few highlights from a financial perspective on a project like this. This development is within existing city limits, so we see this as no additional cost to the taxing partners. Currently, it is a non-taxable property, so any property tax collections that come in is an additional revenue stream for all taxing entities, as it's currently bringing in no dollars in property taxes. It is currently non-taxable. Development does add to our tax base, which we're always driving to do. That helps generate property tax revenue for all local taxing entities. So this would help us in that effort. We do have attached analysis here. There's a overall summary followed by some graphics and finally a spreadsheet. But going through this just at a high level, you can see this first attachment here just summarizes overall, as stated, without the project, non-taxable, it's bringing in nothing. In a 5-year period, that is estimated to bring in roughly $674,000. It's been stated before, but over that 20-year period, then roughly 2.2 million. I've further broken this down by local taxing entity, so you can see in those time frames what would be estimate. This is based on estimates, working with the assessing department on what that value is estimated to be at the current mill levy. Then just taking those numbers and looking cumulative over this 30-year time period, just showing how that revenue builds over time to that 8.8 million. And looking at that just a different way, this will show on an annual basis what that estimated revenue stream is. You're going to see a spike in the beginning, and that's just because during construction, it's fully taxable. So in that time period, we're just estimating 50% and then fully complete. So from that 50% during construction, you can see what that's estimated to bring in that tax revenue. You see that 20 period with the 10% land is fully taxable, but the 10% collections over the 20-year time period on the development. And then finally, when that comes on as fully taxable. And then finally, this is also there for your review, just a spreadsheet for those that like spreadsheets, breaks it down by taxing entity and what those estimates are. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan for a legal review. I will be here after for questions too, as you have. Thank you.
Mr. Gostad, again, our city attorney, for those of you that don't know, I guess that you can introduce yourself too, Mr. Gostad.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Chairperson Hagan and President Bakke and members of the City Council and County Commission and School Board. I have reviewed this on a number of occasions with City Council. I've also shared my research with Haley Wamstead and Laura Cobb, the attorneys for the county and state's attorney and the attorney for the school board. This really started back in 1969. I've gone back and looked at the legislation that has started back in 1969 for tax incentives. At that time, it was directed at, a project was at that point defined as something that was revenue producing, but in ag or manufacturing. And back then, you also had to apply to the State Board of Equalization. There were modifications to what is now 40-57.103, which is the statute that allows for payment in lieu of property taxes. That occurred in 71, 75, 1983, and 1989. But the biggest change, the biggest change was in 1991, where the definition of project was redefined through legislation. It was House Bill 1534 that changed the term project to now only be to mean any revenue producing enterprise or any combination of two or more of these enterprises, and no longer referenced agricultural and manufacturing type of entities. Then in 1994, in a special session, that's when the payment in lieu of property tax came into being. And at that point, there was a memorandum that was provided by the Legislative Council to explain what the change was. And what it did is it added this payment in lieu, an alternative. And in this memorandum, which is part of the legislative history that I located, under the topic of property taxes, it reads that this bill creates a payment in lieu of taxes option that could be used in combination with or in place of property tax exemptions for projects that begin construction after June 30th, 1994. Payments in lieu of taxes could apply to any kind of facility and do not apply only to agricultural property processing facilities. During the same session, there was testimony provided, again by the Legislative Council, and one of the inquiries was that was presented to John Wallstead, who was part of the Legislative Council at that time, what portion of this bill could relate to any other industry or plant. And in response, Mr. Wallstead stated the language below there relating to payments in lieu of property taxes are for any qualifying business, which is any revenue producing enterprise. Anybody can qualify for payments in lieu of taxes. There were a few more changes made in 95, 2013, where they added that the school district and the county then became participants in the pilot, and there had to be approval for anything beyond 5 years. One change that did occur was in 2013. It was dubbed the Walmart bill, and this changed then subsection 1 of 40-57.103 that then added the primary sector to the tax exemption provision. There was absolutely no change to the subsection 2, which deals with the payment in lieu, and no discussion by any legislator about modifying that language as far as the payment in lieu of property taxes. Since then, I've also researched and located 3 Attorney General's opinions that I think are relevant. One was in 1996, shortly after the payment in lieu of property tax statute was adopted. This was issued by then Attorney General Heidi Heitkamp, and it related to whether a payment in lieu could be provided to a project where construction had already started. Because for the tax exemption portion, you could not provide a tax exemption if a project had already been started. And after going through the legislative history, in fact, citing to that memorandum that I just recited to, the Attorney General concluded that it is apparent that the Legislative Assembly considered the in lieu of tax payments as an alternative option for a municipality that is separate from tax exemption. In 1998, again, Attorney General Heidi Heitkamp issued another opinion. This is relating to whether a speculative building would qualify as a project, a revenue-producing project. And there it was found that it could be. That's a fact question for the governing bodies that have to make that decision, whether it is a revenue-producing project or enterprise or not. And then finally, in 2003, this was by Attorney General Wayne Stenjum. Again, similar, asking the question whether a payment in lieu could be provided to a project that had already started construction. And again, citing back to the 96 Attorney General opinion that I just recited to you, again concluded it is apparent the Legislative Assembly considered the lieu of tax payments as an alternative option for a municipality that is separate from a tax exemption. And in fact, went on and said, in this particular circumstance, the city of Mayville that was asking, Portland was asking the question, and the Attorney General said, you can't provide the tax exemption, but the payment in lieu is available to you because it's different. Finally, so in my opinion, based upon my research, the legislative history, the Attorney General's opinions, these type of projects, they are revenue producing. They would be eligible for a pilot. However, there is a case, the Southern Valley case, and the statute provides for it, where you do still need to account for the unfair advantage to those that are in existence. That's a fact-finding mission that each of your boards, in particular the city council, will have to make to determine if there is an unfair advantage to this pilot application or not. Finally, one thing that I talked about briefly last night and I was reminded of is that this agreement will have provisions in it that if the property would happen to become tax exempt after the 20-year period of time. Or if the pilot only lasts for 10 or 15 years, because there are provisions that the pilot can terminate early. There will be provisions in there that call for a clawback if the property would happen to become tax exempt under those set of circumstances, where we recovered the tax savings over the course of the time period the pilot was in place from the developer, from the proceeds from the sale, or even the successor owner. That there will also be a notice recorded with the county recorder so that it shows up in the chain of title as well. So if somebody buys it, they know there's an issue with respect to the tax exemption, and they can get a copy of the pilot. So with that, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gosta. We did have a question at our council meeting last night. Are these being utilized in other cities? And our planning department did go through, and they didn't get across the whole state. They started with our neighbors to the south, but going back to January of 2020, between pilots, tax exemptions, and TIFs, Fargo's utilized this 48 times. And then if you look at Renaissance zones, which is a defined area, which this is not in a Renaissance zone, but it's another tax incentive. And Fargo's from 2020 to 2024 has used the Renaissance zone 294 times. So it's been widely used, at least in our neighbor to the south. So I thought that was worth at this point bringing up. Mr. Phelan.
Yeah, Mayor Boczynski, if I could, some concluding thoughts. President Armcost is quite a humble man. And I just want to point out, when we talk about the rezoning of this particular property, the University of North Dakota and President Armcost took a leap of faith, is that golf course was zoned as university district, meaning that they could create we'll call it a South area campus. They agreed with these two lots that have been specified with the top tracer in the apartment complex that they would zone the golf course as golf course. And in Grand Forks, to rezone something back, it takes a supermajority. So you have 7 council members, you need 6 to bring that back to University District. That'd be awfully hard. And so he doesn't want to say that to you, but they are taking a leap of faith, and to say that they are committed to keeping this golf course in action to the point of having it zoned as a golf course. The other thing I think they want to everyone know, they want to renew this golf course. They know this community can't afford to build another 9-hole golf course. So they want to preserve this golf course as a real important infill development, knowing that the park district, the school district, and the city aren't going to move forward with the 9-hole greenfield golf course, and this is a way to preserve it. And then finally, on the Memorial Village 1 and 2, we think those have been successful projects. Right now, with the 2 buildings, they have a taxable value from our city assessing office at $59.5 million. And before, as we all know, that was a surface parking lot that was a bit broken down. Currently, the taxes on those 2 buildings annually with their incentive, and there's one incentive for a 90% 20-year pilot, and the other one is a 20-year 95% pilot. That's bringing in taxable revenue of $119,774 as part of the initial. And then, as Maureen talked about, the year 1 through 30, I think her number was like $8 million for this development. Right now, the same numbers we would propose that Memorial Village 1 and 2 would bring in over that 30-year period, $14.32 million. And then finally, the city was able to negotiate a user agreement both with the Albrecht Field and also with the Pollard Center to complement what we're currently building at the Altru Sports Complex. And so we have a long-term agreement that the community will be able to use both of those facilities as complementary facilities to what we're currently building south of the Alaris Center. So thank you very much, Mayor Boczynski and members.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. President Armcost, did you have anything before we open up the public comment period?
Just to say thanks to all of you for listening to this project, the redevelopment effort, and the story that went behind it. I know you'll have lots of great questions, and I also wanted to offer that my team and I, if there's questions or comments that you have following today's session, if you would like us to come visit with you either individually or with your bodies, we're happy to do so. Just let us know, give us a call, and we're happy to be there to share more information. So again, please accept my gratitude for listening tonight.
All right. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 5, which is the public comment period. So we don't have comment cards tonight. Is that true, Ms. Lundmark? You didn't have anybody fill those out?
Yep, I was told we'll just treat it
Okay.
as a regular public hearing. If individuals could just please state your name clearly for the record so that I can record who commented
And
today.
then when you come up, you'll see the timer on the side, so we'll have 5 minutes. And, unless you're really off topic, I won't, say anything, but try to stay on topic. If you do, we might direct you back and that will cost you some time, but focus on the topic of this evening. I think that's out of respect of everyone that's up here tonight. So with that, I'm going to open up the public comment period. So anyone that wants to speak on this, please come forward to the mic and state your name and get started. Mr. Krausnick, please.
Hey. Good evening. My name is Andrew Krausnick. I'm a resident of Grand Forks and the owner and founder of Albatross Indoor Golf Club. I stand before you to ask for basic structural fairness for local businesses already funding this community. The proposal you suggest is a $12 million tax break, a 20-year pilot, another market rate apartment complex that will compete with all existing landlords, and the other half of this subsidy funds a commercial, for-profit golf entertainment venue that will compete dollar for dollar with my existing business as well as many other businesses. Let's look at the actual law. North Dakota Century Code 4057-0.1-01, which states, "It is the intent of the Legislative Assembly that political subdivisions in the State Board of Equalization in their determination of whether the tax exemptions authorized by this chapter shall be granted shall give due weight to their impact and effect upon existing industry and business to the end that an unfair advantage shall not be given to new or expanded enterprises, which is to the substantial detriment of existing enterprises." This statutory mandate is very clear, and it applies to all incentives in this chapter, including pilots. Giving a multi-million-dollar tax holiday to a direct competitor is the exact definition of an unfair advantage and statutory substantial detriment. It is using municipal tax policy to pick winners and losers to the destruction of local existing taxpayers. On the application under competing businesses, Mr. Burian wrote, "No similar business to the Top Tracer driving range facility." That is false. In their initial presentation, Mr. Kuntz proudly stated the facility would house 14 indoor golf simulator bays. Look closely at the video, and you'll see garage doors above the outdoor hitting bays. When indoor golf season hits, those doors close. They convert to a fully or primarily focused indoor simulator facility that directly cannibalizes my business. The outdoor gamified hitting bays compete with me on their own, but any indoor simulator component would be a massive blow to my livelihood. Mr. Armacost and the developers stop saying it out loud, as they know it's in direct violation of competition aspect of a pilot. They probably regret bringing it up initially, as they maybe never anticipated a little guy like me standing up for my business and standing up for fairness. A great example from part of the same development team is a recent 5-year pilot they received for the domain. At their neighborhood meeting, they showed elaborate drawings that included all sort of amenities, including 2 golf simulators. Then, when it came through for city approval, that drawing wasn't included in the packet. School and county, yet another 5-year pilot you had no say in. Baker Tilly even reports that golf bay and simulator rental revenue represents the largest line item for this Top Tracer project, direct competition, and $1.65 million in food and beverage sales. How does that not compete with every restaurant and bar in town? The same market destruction applies to the housing piece. Pilot tax incentives have been improved for over 1,100 units, wiping out $60 million in potential property tax revenues. About 675 pilot approved units haven't even been built yet. And with an already stable vacancy rate over 5%, we're looking at an oversaturated market, driving down cap rates and lowering existing property values. The Baker Tilly slide claiming no additional expense to the county, school, or park districts is mathematically bankrupt, along with the city's same claim. 170 new apartments bring new students into our classrooms, more police and fire calls, more strain on roads, sewer, and so on. More draw on county services. All of these items are not without expense. The 10% argument going from no tax now to something, it's flawed. Taxpayers and business owners will pick up the slack during these 20 years. Memorial Village uses a shining example of what public-private partnership should look like is ridiculous. Memorial Village, while a beautiful project, is a prime example of unfair taxation and cronyism. I've been having to compete with the 3 golf simulators in their complexes now to my substantial detriment, while they enjoy 95 and 90% pilots for 20 years. All landlords are also having to compete unfairly. The promise of future tax revenues. This same development group can sell the facilities at Memorial Village to UND at year 20, dissolve their LLCs, and have zero liability for future tax revenues or clawbacks. Same now with Ray Richards. If they sell the LLC, if the LLC sells to UND at the end of the pilot, the LLC distributes their assets to their investors and dissolves the LLC. Who's left to be held accountable? Nobody. And that's what makes these gentlemen astute business owners. Competition is great. I'm not against it. I am against unfair tax incentivized competition. Government's picking of winners and losers and corruption of the free market. Again, North Dakota Century Code states that an unfair advantage shall not be given to new or expanded enterprises, which is to the substantial detriment of existing enterprises. I am telling you this project would do just that. Please do not consider a tax incentive for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krausnick. Perfect timing. Mr. Samuelson. Good to see you this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, all the representatives. What are we all here for? We're here to convince you to give a project, or more succinctly, 3 projects, a tax incentive, a tax break, a exemption. They get a pass on it. Yeah, you're going to get this really nice golf place. That's one of them. If that was all by itself, would you still do that? Would you still give them a 90% 20-year tax break? One of the other projects is housing. Would you do that again? Would you give them a 90% tax break for the next 20 years if it was just by itself? The other part of it is helping out the university and trying to save a beloved golf course that apparently it seems is losing $500,000 a year. Well, right now the money that you're going to be getting is less than that. You're going to be giving up more than that. Why not just give them $500,000 a year? All 3 of you together could do it. You can split it up with your own little tax breaks, 24% from the city and 36% from the school district or whatever. You've got the money. Apparently you do, because you're not asking for most of what you can get out of this project. All right. So going back to Mr. Gallstad's comments, one of the things that I urge you all to look up is Century Code 1-01-49, which is primary sector business. He likes to say, oh, you can combine 2 or 3 of these units together. What he is neglecting to keep reinforcing is this is a primary sector business project. You have to have a primary sector thing. Go back and look up that Century Code. Says nothing about housing, says nothing about golf course places, says nothing about a golf course. Why are we doing this? A lot of you have already said you don't want to do this for certain aspects of it, but now we're all going to get together, lump this all into one big cheese factory and decide, oh, nope, this is what we can do because, hey, we need to do this one thing. This is ridiculous. Please stop. This is going to put an extra burden on all of the residents of Grand Forks County for the next 20 years. Every single business person, every single farmer, every single everyday person who's going out there trying to start a business. My grandma makes the greatest flippers in the country. I want to create a business. If I come to you with paperwork that shows that I'm only going to make 4%, but if I can get a 20-year tax break, I can now get 6%, is that legit? Would you all say that that's cool? You'd be all right with that? You'd vote for that? This is ridiculous. You're putting this all back on us. All the residents, all the other businesses, all the other farmers, all the regular people who are doing the same thing that this organization is trying to do. Another portion of what Mr. Gallstad said with the 40-57 is that it should not be, the incentive should not be just for, when the business should not be just for the money-making ability of the shareholders. Baker Tilly, in your paperwork, in this whole project and presentation they just gave you, said, well, we're not going to do it if we can only make 5% a year on it or 4% a year on it. But if we can make 6%, then that's okay. That goes right against the face of the definition of the Century Code that is being listed right here. It says, not just for the benefit of the shareholders. All of this is wrong. You guys, everybody listening, all of you here, please look and think really, really hard about this. Is this really the right project? It's a great project. I'm not going to say it's not. It would be wonderful to be able to do like an outside golf thing in the middle of January, you know? My gloves don't quite really get the good grip there. But that's not the point. If this was such a good project, make the project stand on its own. Don't make the citizens of Grand Forks County have to subsidize it, which is exactly what it is. It's a tax subsidy for one group, for one project.
Thank you, Mr. Samuelson. Mr. Bouclair, and I don't think, we don't have any restrictions on folks that don't live in the community on this evening. So, Mr. Bouclair, please.
Ron?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. I'm commissioners, council members, and school board members. My name is Sean Bouclair. I operate a small business in Grand Forks here. First, I agree with all the previous speakers regarding this is not the best interest of Grand Forks County taxpayers. Is it the best interest of UND? Absolutely. But your loyalty is not to UND, it's to the city, to the county, and to the school board. Additional factors to consider. Councilmember Osalski made an excellent point last night regarding non-primary sector businesses. Why doesn't anybody ask the North Dakota Attorney General for his opinion? At the end of the day, it's the only opinion that matters. Any of the three entities can request his opinion. As a private citizen, you cannot. As a former school board member, I think it's fiscally irresponsible not to ask the question of North Dakota Attorney General. It's not fair to the taxpayers. My understanding, you had to make severe cuts to teachers at the school level because of tax revenue. Mr. Bierke, same tough cuts at the county and pay increases. Yet here we have a wonderful project for UND Golf. Is it really necessary? Second opinion is direct competition. I really struggle with my economics background. Every one of the pilots you approved, right, competes against apartments, golf simulators, and food or beverage. What happens if you don't approve this pilot? My understanding, the project doesn't happen. Does economic activity still occur in the community? Absolutely. UND is a wonderful place. They have an incredible ability to raise money for North Dakota State Legislature. My understanding, you can check with President Armacost, I think it was over $120 million North Dakota Legislature gave to UND. Furthermore, UND alumni have over $500 million endowment. If they want this golf course to be the level they want, and I think they deserve, let them pay for it. It's not the responsibility of the county, the city, or the school board. The second point regarding Ray Richards Golf Course is never miss a good opportunity not to solve a problem it's not yours. This is UND's problem to make the golf course sustainable. It is not the counties, it is not the cities, right? We all agree, it's not the school board's problem. When you try to solve somebody else's problem as one government entity, you often create a problem for your own. I think it's pretty right? The school board, if you haven't granted so many tax abatements, would your budget be in better shape? Absolutely. The same with the county. The city has alternative ways to raise revenue, right? You do not. It's primary property tax base. Finally, as a North Dakota taxpayer, I find it incredible that a 9-hole golf course can lose $500,000 a year. Up and down the Red River Valley, there's 9-hole golf courses that break even every year. How does UND lose $500,000 a year in a golf course? It's an embarrassment to the university to have a school business to accept these sort of losses. It's pretty simple. If you do a simple Google search and you ask, what do municipalities do when they can't run a golf course profitably? The same thing they do with farmland. Same thing they do with oil wells. They lease them out. They lease the development rights out. It'd be very simple to minimize the costs. They maybe have to kick in $50,000 a year from the alumni to break even. Wonderful. I'm deeply disappointed in the University of North Dakota and the North Dakota taxpayer. They let the Ray Richards golf course and the clubhouse deteriorate. It's an embarrassment to the community. It's my understanding. There's a porta potty that's been out there for 3 years. Does anybody think that's honors the Ray Richards family? Absolutely not. So the solution is simple, all right? It's UND's problem. They have the resources from the North Dakota taxpayers and the Alumni Foundation to fix it. You don't need to fix it for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Beclair. Any other speakers, please? I forget how to pronounce your name, but
No
you could-
offense. Almaz Teganu. Hey, everybody. So I'm not as knowledgeable as all the other speakers. Wasn't planning on being here tonight. So I just took a couple notes and just a few things I wanted to talk about. As far as the housing, can you guys hear me fine? Okay. As far as the housing that we're talking about bringing in, I know this has been a big topic all across the board. Bring in affordable housing. Just to kind of give you an idea of all of the apartments that have currently come in, we're looking on average at around $1,000 for a studio apartment. That is not affordable housing and for the average individual. So I don't think that this housing is going to even anything out. Also, on top of that, I know they were already discussing raising certificate of occupancy costs for landlords of quadruplex and below. So that, again, is pushing out small landlords and benefiting corporate landlords. So, again, we're not looking at equalizing housing across the board. So I think we need to really do a little digging and see who we're really benefiting. I've said it before, we keep benefiting the top percent, while the bottom, the rest of the 80% of us keeps paying the difference. On top of that, kind of like they already said, I think if I had a business and I was looking to get more money and I came to you and said, hey, I'm in the red $500,000 a year, can I get more money? The answer is normally going to be no. So I think there's a lot of really smart people in the room. I think maybe our time and tax dollars would be better spent maybe helping them right side this and look at how we can put it in the black instead of staying in the red. Because giving more money and $30 million, I don't know if that's going to really help, when we also know that it's going to take another strain on the water, on the electric grid. Who's going to pay the offset in that? Most likely it's going to be us, right? We've already seen hikes. It's going to keep going up, our electricity, our water, etc. So again, the citizens keep paying for the millionaires and billionaires to bring in things that are not going to benefit the average citizen. On top of that, we all know average people can't go golfing. It's kind of expensive. All right. On top of that, like I said, I wasn't really prepared. So that just, I guess, again, just take a look at what we're doing. We've already given a pilot to a Chinese company. So I don't think they needed the money. So we're giving China money. We know that people on this board have ties to China. So there's also probably conflict of interest. We know the other one that went belly up and was bankrupt. There was 70 other investors that we still don't know who invested in that. So why don't we do a little more digging and do more due diligence before we keep giving these tax incentives and having the average citizen pay for it? Again, like I said, at the end of the day, I've told you all this before, but James 4:17, therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is a sin. At the end of the day, we answer to somebody far greater than anybody in this room or anybody that's telling you to keep passing these pilots to benefit the top 1%. So please do a little more due diligence and let's make the right decision for once and actually listen to the citizens and not the people that you're in the pockets of. Thank you. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Miss Dodd, am I right? All right, please.
Hi, I am Kelsey Dodd. I've helped at Albatross. Sorry, I'm going to prop this up here. At Albatross for the last few years. I sent in some comments earlier and anticipated reading those for you today. But as I was listening to the presentation today with Mr. Burian and Mr. Johnson, talking about the community impact potential of this project and how it's more than people can imagine, I will tell you that it is something I can imagine. I can imagine it because it is what we offer the community at Albatross. In fact, I would say they made a better argument than any of us could as to the gravity of competition this project truly represents. Over the last 13 years at Albatross, we have seen kids grow into young adults. We have worked with DJGA to offer discounted rates and tournaments for kids. We have hosted end-of-season team parties for all athletics, birthday parties, golf team practices from schools, I would say within a 60-mile radius, women's instruction clinics, couples nights, post-prom parties, team outings, school field trips, nursing home field trips, company parties, and too many fundraiser tournaments to count. The biggest being the Buddy Classic. It's our biggest event, which raises funds for golf accessibility in the community. We've seen bachelor and bachelorette parties, multiple grooms dinners, and if you can believe it, we've even had a couple get married in a simulator. We have also been a regular stop for the UND football team during their recruitment season, and we have hosted the team for their team building events. We pride ourselves on having top-tier technology, and we even discussed with coaches this last spring about hosting a local tournament for area high school boys teams if the weather didn't turn before they could get outside. So when we discuss the community benefits of this project, I have no doubts they would be endless because we are already offering them at our facility. I know there are things I'm missing, but hopefully this can give you a glimpse of what is already offered in the community. A glimpse into a small business built, owned, and operated since 2012 by a proud Central grad and a UND alumnus. Please do not take it lightly when we say that this pilot is an unfair advantage and will be to the substantial detriment of Albatross. We are fine with competition, but it needs to be on equal footing without a tax incentive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd. Any other folks? Mr. Lund.
Good evening, Mayor, Chair Hagan, President Aki. Thank you for giving of your Tuesday evening to this important topic. And for those of you new to your roles, thank you for raising your hand and providing your leadership for your respective organizations and to the community. My name is Keith Lund. I'm the president of the Grand Forks Region Economic Development Corporation. I need to say right out of the chute that our EDC board has not taken a formal position on this topic, so I'm not bringing any formal recommendation, but we've had enough discussion around topics like this that I feel I'd like to just share some information with you this evening. We've heard the term primary sector a lot. Our organization's focus is to support the growth of primary sector companies. A definition wasn't provided. I'll provide a very short one. Companies who make something here by various means and sell it outside the trade region. So bringing new resources to the community that help all become successful. Housing certainly isn't a primary sector, but housing does impact primary sector. We recently went through a strategic planning process and won't bore you with all of that, but one of the things, we had stakeholder feedback sessions, businesses in the community, advisory board members, a number of folks came to share what that plan should look like. And sort of a consensus around some of the comments made were, there wasn't concern about the lack of opportunity in Grand Forks, but there was a concern about the constraints in Grand Forks. And there's a lot of constraints. You could take a look at air service and you could take a look at natural gas. We've had a lot of discussion about that, but the most recent or the most common constraint that was brought up was housing. So I wanted to share that with you. I'm honest, I want to be honest and say that I haven't taken a deep dive in the financial information of this project that was provided. I will say that Baker Tilly did provide a very compelling presentation about the but-for analysis, but I will tell you that I do believe, and I really trust President Armorcast, if he says the project cannot move forward without the support that's being requested, I absolutely believe him. So it really comes down to a function of, does the community want this project or not, from my standpoint. It does provide housing, I think, is a need for the community. Although the vacancy rate has improved, there's a lot of opportunity coming. Mr. Phelan did a presentation last night that talked strategic direction or strategic priorities for the community. Talked about a number of projects that are coming and some that may. And if I'm not mistaken, there were 1,600 potential jobs that were associated with that. And I don't even remember if the new Space Development Agency Operations Center with 300 guardians coming to Grand Forks was a part of that presentation. So it might be a larger number than that. So I think, housing is going to be a need. Take a look at Agristo coming, a number of things that are happening. So I think we've all pretty aware of that. And it also, this project would provide an amenity that creates another element of quality of life that, companies who are trying to attract people to Grand Forks would find valuable. So there's goodness in both of those things. But what I personally keep coming back to is the fact that this property is not on the tax rolls. It was deeded to the University of North Dakota in 1962. For 64 years, predating me, this property has not been paying property tax. And granted, there's a large exemption or a large request in front of you, but this would take land that is paying zero and pay $100,000 a year for the next 20 years and significantly more after that. So to put it in vernacular, the companies that we meet with on a regular basis, that would take a non-revenue generating asset and create a revenue generating asset from your consideration of this project tonight. And I do know personally that there is goodness in that. So I'll just conclude my comments and thank you again for taking your time and providing your leadership to important topics like this, and look forward to your deliberations in the future months to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lund. Any other folks wishing to speak this evening? I'm going to call one more time. So anybody else that wants to speak? All right. You definitely can reach out to me and others too outside of this. That would be great. Oh, Mona. Everything in me wants me to shut it down right now, but I'll let you come up, Mona.
I was not going to talk tonight.
You don't have to.
Thank you for that.
All right, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Mona Leake, and thank you for all being here tonight. I have been on this mission against pilots for over a year. I've spoke at all of your board meetings and a lot of you personally. I welcome the new members of the school board. Speaking of school board, I'm going to give you one little nugget. After a pilot was passed, I ran into a school board member and I said to him, "Why did you pass that when you're in debt and you need every dime you can get?" And he said, I think we should be a good neighbor." Now, if you know how fiercely I protect public education and in favor of it, you would know I took a deep breath and I said, your job is to be responsible for the education of students in this community. You work from that student out to the teacher, the para, the janitor, and the lunch lady. I said, you have to have a balanced budget in order to do that and provide education. Our future is education for students and equality. And President Armacost, you are well aware of that because you are a president of our university that our tax dollars go to. So anyway, I think as representatives, you have to stay in your lane. You have to be conscious of what your role is in our community. It's a big responsibility. I appreciate you all stepping up for it. But I will say these pilots are a detriment to our community. We have to rein them in. And here's one thing I stood up for. I got really charged up with Harry. He did an excellent job. But here's something I want to put forth is that there's a pattern here. Mr. Armacost, President Armacost, he's an excellent businessman. He's a politician. He's doing a good job at the university. And what he's doing is he is coming to the city and asking for money. We are already paying $1.6 billion for that university. Now he's going to double dip again, take some more money out of our other pocket. But that's a good businessman. I give him credit for that. But don't allow that to cloud your judgment on what your responsibilities are. They're to the average citizen, to our small business people who have been here for a long time. These developers, I never look at the clock. Okay, these developers, how many millions of dollars have they already received? They started out with Memorial 1 and 2, which I was against. It's not our responsibility. We are already doing that as taxpayers, providing funding for the university through the state. This is a pattern, and here they're back again asking. Not that I'm against all these glossy things that you see, they're wonderful. But you go and you talk to a family that's trying to pay their taxes. Let's get real. The majority of the people in this town are struggling. Not all. You know, we've got a good life in North Dakota and in Grand Forks. And Mayor, you've done a good job, but not on pilots. You got to quit. And I hope all of you take this into consideration. I could talk for a long time. I've put in a lot of time following these pilots. They're not fair, not for apartments. And don't let Mr. Lund tell you about all these people coming in. What about the people that have lived here for years? What about us who are citizens that we've stayed here? We've raised our families. We built businesses. We've been on boards. I am a strong supporter of Grand Forks. I really am. But common sense has to rule. Let's
Thank you, Mrs. Leake.
Oh, I really
sorry.
did 5 minutes.
I let you go over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. And if anybody wants to talk to me, I'll have a cup of coffee with you.
All right. That's not a bribe. She's just going to give you a coffee. All right. I'm going to do, we already did going twice, so I'm going to say going third in case Ms. Leak to prompt anyone else for any further comments. All right. With that, I'm going to close the public comment period and then open it up. I wanted to make just a few comments, and I was going to open up to leadership, and then we'll kind of spread out from there. A couple comments. I think a lot of us, we're on the same page. We have the same beliefs about trying to lower taxes and how to create more revenue. I think from my standpoint, when you don't have increased expenses and you can bring more revenue in, we don't own the tax dollars of something that doesn't exist yet. It has to be created in order for that revenue to come in. So even getting a smaller portion, we're offsetting the taxes for everyone else. So my true belief is that these, if they aren't going to happen, that's really the argument here. Because if they're not going to happen, getting 100% of nothing doesn't benefit any taxpayer. So this one in particular, I don't think we lose a whole heck of a lot. I don't think if we don't have this, we don't gain anything. If we kill it, what are we benefiting by trying to kill this project? It doesn't help us quite at all. And I guess I would disagree. I think President Armacost came here and we talked about solving a problem that's UND's. It's pretty rare that the president comes here, solves a problem for you, and gives you some money through property taxes that haven't ever been collected. So I view that a little bit different. I just do want to say, I think average people can go golfing. If you have a golf club and a golf ball, you can put it in your backyard and you can golf. I think I was able to do that when I was a kid and I didn't have very much money. I don't fully agree that this is a competition. There's 5 golf simulators, businesses in Fargo, and they have a much larger suite shots. They've all been able to live together. You have a substantially different clientele. You're not going to a golf simulator. You don't even bring your own clubs to a top tracer. You're going to have clubs that are already there. When you go to Albatross, you're playing Sawgrass or Augusta National. It's a difference. It's a massive difference. And I personally think that this has the opportunity to create more golfers in the community. It gives them a new outlet that could create more, which I think is great. The driving range already existed at Ray Richards, and it was paying no taxes. So if it was competition then, now receiving $674,000 from that entity over the first 5 years while it's operating as a modernized driving range is a substantial benefit to the community. Just a couple of points that I pointed out, and when you spoke to that person from the school board, and they were absolutely correct. They want to get every dime that they can get. That means a project that wouldn't happen, and you can get some revenue from that. That is going to benefit your teachers, your paras, and everyone along the line. So I think that you can look at this from both sides. I don't think either side is villainized. I don't think we should villainize people that are investing in our community either. So I do think it's a tough discussion. I think it's a great one, and I'm looking forward to having it. But that's all my comments. I'll try to be quiet and let everyone else run from here. So with that, I am going to let President Sandy go first, and then we'll just work our way with this. If you have any comments, otherwise we'll open up to the larger group. And I know the team's still there to answer questions. That's really what tonight is about. So with that, President Sandy, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate everyone being here. I think from the comments that you heard tonight, I think it's a perfect example of why the community actually supports this concept and supports the golf course. When we can name the people by name as they come up, because it's the exact same 6 people that show up for the meetings and say the exact same thing every time that we have a pilot concept. The people that are contrary to the pilots, it's not a growing number of people. If it were, they would be showing up, but they're not. I think, again, generally speaking, I think our community is hungry for people to make hard decisions. And sometimes hearing the negativity, yet still voting against it is hard. It is. We had one person, of course, he's quasi-government, get up and say some nice things. I appreciate that Keith would do that. I wish more people in our community would show up and say the nice things. That doesn't mean I don't think they believe the good things. It's, to me, the people of Grand Forks have generally been satisfied with the government they get, which is why there aren't people, a wide variety of people showing up at every meeting complaining about the governing that we're doing. I believe the community wants the golf course to stay. For those of you that were here back in 2016, there was a significant outcry of disappointment in the community when President Kennedy decided to close the golf course. I will say that there was a significantly more amount of people that were happy when the golf course reopened. It was hard. I think it was hard for the university because they were put in a position where perhaps it wasn't fully thought through when they closed. They took a bad situation, tried to make it good, and here we are today. At least it's open. I do believe that the community as a whole wants the golf course. I'll contend that President Armacost and myself, I believe that the university, it's not in their core competencies to run a golf course. It just isn't. We've been fortunate that we've had the amenity in our community for so many years, but certainly running it at a $500,000 deficit isn't what the university signed up for when they took the land gift. I don't think that, contrary to popular opinion, or probably a very small few people's opinion, the State Board of Higher Education, just because UND runs a $1 billion organization, the State Board of Higher Education isn't writing checks for $500,000 a year to run a local community golf course. That's just not what they're going to do. UND somehow has to figure it out. I believe these are the reasons why UND went out for RFP in the first place. They were trying to figure out how they can get things to move forward, generate revenue to cover their costs. And frankly speaking, we as a community are lucky that UND was able to find developers that were willing and able to make a multi-million-dollar investment in our community. For those of you that haven't been paying attention, there isn't a list of 100 people with money that are trying to build big things in our community. There just isn't. There are a few number that have the capabilities and the wherewithal to make the investments in our community, And so we're fortunate that when there's an opportunity, they're raising their hand. I think we can also all agree that there is no actual definition of what's a reasonable rate of return. Everybody's rate of return is different. I think if you're someone on that's older, you might have bonds that are paying you 5%. You might be happy with that. If you're a younger person investing in something that generates you more revenue, Standard & Poor's has averaged 11% the last 20 years. I'm not saying 11% is a reasonable rate of return, but certainly any one of those people that are going to invest their millions of dollars could put it in Standard & Poor's and reasonably expect to get a reasonable return on their money. I don't know why anyone in our community would expect a developer to put their money into an investment knowing full well that they're not going to get whatever they would consider a reasonable rate of return. They're just not going to do it. I agree with the mayor's points on the competition related to golf simulators versus the Top Tracer golf. If you want to see a great example of who uses a Top Tracer, go search YouTube, search for the rise and fall of Top Golf. It'll explain to you who actually is using the Top Tracer type driving ranges. It's not the competitors or the people that actually want to improve their golf game that go to golf simulators. It's a completely different clientele. Mr. Samuelson asked specifically, would we give this pilot if each one of these things were by themselves? I couldn't answer that today. What I can tell you is they are grouped together in this project, and we're being asked to answer it as a group. How do we want to deal with it? Potential outcomes. The upside on this is we could get to keep the golf course. We had 169 much needed apartments to the community. We actually gained back the driving range at Ray Richards. And we had over 2.2 million in new property tax revenue over the next 20 years. To me, it's a shocking amount of upside. Whereas the potential downside, the loss of the golf course and the potential amenities, and then UND moves to redevelop the entire property. It's going to happen, and we all have to face and understand that. The University of North Dakota doesn't have $500,000 to spend on this golf course every year. They're not going to do it. They've told us as such. And in which case, the only contrary to that is redevelopment of the whole thing. So I believe UND has been a good partner in this. They've been working very closely with the city and the neighborhood to find a design that benefits the university and provides amenities to the community with as little impact to the neighbors as possible, including Mrs. Leak, who lives very near here. The Ray Richards Golf Course is a significant asset to our community. It provides great green space and a wonderful family golf course. And yes, it isn't necessarily all of our responsibility to save the golf course for UND. However, we do have the opportunity to listen to who I believe is the majority of our community and actually save the golf course. We all lose nothing by saying yes to this pilot. We lose nothing by saying yes. We potentially lose everything or the golf course by saying no. And certainly, again, it costs the taxpayers not a nickel. These are non-cash transactions. We don't lose, as the mayor pointed out. Providing a tax break, 100% of no project is nothing. So, again, by saying no, it endangers the golf course. It puts UND in a very difficult financial position. And as importantly, it sends the message to the city of Grand Forks and Grand Forks County that we aren't open for business. Again, there isn't a line of people waiting or trying to invest in our community. I appreciate when people raise their hand, when they try to do good things, when they want to. And I look at this as a double whammy. UND gets something great. The community gets some much needed apartments and some nice amenities. Plus, we all reap the benefits of the additional tax revenue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, President Sandy. Chair Hagan, can you go even longer than me
I
and
don't,
President
I don't
Sandy
think I
just
can
did.
compete with either of your comments. I will add though, for the free golfing at Lincoln Golf Course, there is a kids course for free. You can use the golf clubs in the clubhouse. So if you want free golfing, there you go.
All right, thank you. President Bakke, just any comments or questions that you have, please?
First and foremost, I want to thank everybody who made their presentation here today because it was very important for all of us to have the information from everybody, including the citizens who made public comment. You know, this presentation raised a lot more questions for me than it did answers. You know, what is our current occupancy for apartments? Do we have a need for these extra apartments? Seems like every time we turn around, there's a new apartment building going up. So I wonder about, will there be only a 5% vacancy of those apartments? I get a little concerned that it's being built in an area that's mainly a residential area. I also get concerned about how this is affecting housing sales in our community. But at the same time, it would provide some nice resources for the golfers in the community and for our UND students. So I think this is something that we'll have to go back as the school board and have some thoughtful consideration and review all these comments that have been made today and make an informed decision. And I thank you for giving us this information. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bakke. All right, now's the time we're going to open it up. I'm going to start with non-city council members. We kind of discussed this last night, so sorry, Ms. Osowski. And just as we're hosting, that's why I'm kind of directing it. Normally, obviously, it'd be your chairs, so don't feel offended by any means. But certainly, any questions, anything that you want, any comments, I'll just kind of be looking for folks that want to put their hand up, other than city council members, just for the first round. But we'll get to you. We'll get to you. So. Mr. Burke, anything from your side, or you want to wait to?
Well, I was just saying, let me check Mr. Rust and Mr. Hodney first on the phone, and then just to say any questions or comments.
Sounds good. Anybody online? That would be a great way to start. I guess sans Mr. Weigel, we've already put the council on the bench. I'll give you just a couple more seconds. That would be for Ms. Adams, Mr. Hodney, or Mr. Rustad.
This is Mr. Rusted speaking. I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rustad. All right, Mr. Bierke. Mr. Clevin, did you have something?
Thank you, if I may.
Oh, just 1 second. Are you okay with Mr. Clevin? Okay, Mr. Clevin,
I just
please
want to
go.
make sure the other two attendees on phone, I don't know if they got enough time to respond after Mr. Rustad.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see any of them unmute, so I was going to take it as silence as a cue. Thank you. All right. With no further ado, please, Mr. Bierke.
Well, first of all, this is a policy discussion, so no ill will, but I'm not afraid of policy discussion. So, but I want to make that clear. And some of the questions I'm going to ask, if you weren't up here asking for government assistance, I would never ask you personally, because it's none of my business. I live in the world of leave me alone. And so, but once you step into this type of situation, then you're going to get questions. And just to keep in perspective, we just came from a budget meeting where I looked at the department head in his face and told him he needs to eliminate a position and start working harder. So that's where we're at with our budget. We're not in good shape. And so, just for perspective, a couple questions. I don't know who answers them, so I'll just go as I wrote them. The lease for the land, is that a 20-year lease? And what else does it say in there? Is it automatically renewed? Is it escape clause? How does that work?
Mr. Burke, if you're okay, they'll answer them, then we'll go back to you so we can get a lot of questions going. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure you're good with that. All right. Well, yeah, go and just stand there. All right. Push the button. Hit the button so we can hear you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. My name is Tom Burris. I'm the Assistant Director of Real Estate and Space at the university. So I oversee the real estate at the university. The lease is currently set up. The draft, or that's currently under draft. It is not finalized as of yet. Obviously, we're waiting on some financial numbers on that, but we are currently at a 40-year with 2 optional 10s. So ultimately, it's going to be a 60-year ground lease. for the two developments.
Okay, thank you. And then and I'm going to go through the, in case people don't know me, I love to read. So I read through everything that I was given. So, and some of it might be going off memory, but I'm trying to understand the concept of you have a group of people that are, I'm going to call them investors. And so I'm trying to understand how they all work. Are they all going to be getting money from this project, or how they are going to make money is by doing something for the project? And I'll give you my questions. Number one, there was in your information, there was a development fee for the housing project and a development fee for the golf. And I'm going off memory. I believe it's approximately 2 million and 8 million for a total of 2.8 million. Could have been six. I can't remember the number.
800,000, you mean 2.8? You said 8 million?
I'm sorry. Yeah, 2.8 million. So who gets that development fee, and how does this work? Are they tied into the bit, or is this what they're going to get for whatever they bring to the project?
So Steve, you turned it off.
Yeah, turn it. Yeah, there you go. Look for the red light. There we go. One more time. Might be the other button. There you go. Just leave it on. Anyone that comes up to talk, it'll be easier.
All those that, Bob, if I can just go to Terry, is that all right?
Yeah. Just you don't have to go through the
Okay.
chair, blah blah.
Yeah,
blah.
forget all that.
That's a lot of chairs
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And Janelle, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were the president, or I would have done that better at the beginning as well. So Terry, from a development fee standpoint, and I'm going to sound like I may be bouncing around a little bit, but the development fee, first of all, is a standard practice in development. For instance, I mentioned that we've responded to a request for information. We've responded to 2 requests for proposals, and we've been working on this for 3 years already without seeing any revenue. And so all of that was done at risk. And then as you get into the project, there's various tasks that have to be done that aren't standard architectural practices. They're not standard engineering practices. They're not standard, other practices. And so you have to have a way to compensate for those. And then lastly, oftentimes, there's going to have to be some equity generated and then a loan generated. And the folks that put their equity in and then hope to have a return on that, you saw that the returns on these types of projects with UND are relatively skinny compared to what Baker Tilly was saying is the normal range. So we're way on the low side of where that would be. And so oftentimes the development fee will follow the equity to a degree. For those that bring in the down payment, they'll get a portion of that equity or that development fee as well. And if you were to benchmark these development fees in the pro forma against other development projects across the region, you will see that these are all on the low side from a comparison standpoint.
Okay, then, and I know she had a plethora of, one of my favorite words, of people involved here. So, for example, if somebody is someone in your group doing the designing of the buildings and the, I'll call it, wastewater, stormwater, is that in-house? And is that is that their contribution? Are they getting paid full price? I'll put that, are they getting paid full price for that?
So,
and then are they also still involved in the return from the buildings?
So any of the trades or professionals that work on the project will get paid as if they would get paid on normal work. So if there happens to be a partner, in my case, it's also a civil engineer, we would do the civil engineering for the project and be compensated for that. The work that I do as an investor would be outside of that particular activity, but we'd have a contract with the LLC to do all of that work at standard rates.
Okay, and then are all the people involved at the end of if it gets done, are they all those people, are they all the beneficiary of the management of the facilities and the rent? I mean, so they're all involved in that too?
So the only direct beneficiary of the management would be, in this case, Dakota Commercial, because they would be proposed to be the manager of the apartments. But on an indirect basis, should the project make money, ultimately, those profits would be distributed to whoever had equity in the project. And so if somebody were to invest in the project, that 6%, some of that will be retained for capital improvements, some of that will be used to handle inflation, and then some of that will ultimately be dispersed, and that disbursement would go to anybody that made a investment in the project.
Okay, and then just in closing, and I know it's been stated, but I'm just going to speak from the county, and I think a lot of people in the room know this. I didn't like these on the city council. I don't like them on the county commission, and it's to me, it's just a policy issue that I get what you're saying about it wouldn't happen, or other ones, it won't be as much, whatever. But all I know is we keep doing all these pilots, because this isn't a one-off, and that's the issue I have. All this revenue the county is going to see, Bob and I will be in a coffin and cockroaches will be crawling all over us. It's not going to help us pay our bills. And that's the issue when, I don't like them, but when it's nonstop pilots, and so this isn't necessarily for you guys, but when it's nonstop, I mean, literally it's nonstop, long-term, short-term, whatever, we don't have 35 million in sales tax revenue. And if we're getting little to no new growth because it gets exempted, how do we pay our bills? And that's a rhetorical question. But that's the situation where the county's at. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And once again, in closing, and the ones who know me a long time, I am not a personal guy as far as I'm not taking shots at anyone. This is all a policy debate. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
I don't love these discussions, but I don't take it personally.
Yeah. You know me, that's how I roll. So I appreciate, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Berkey. Much appreciated. Any other school board members or county commissioners that would like to make a comment at this time?
Can we ask questions?
Absolutely. That
I
would
got
be
lots
perfect.
of questions.
Please do.
I kind of made a promise to myself I would only ask questions. And mind you, a lot of these are questions to make sure information's presented in the public sphere, if you will. They're not necessarily reflective of ultimate decision making, but they're questions I think are important to answer. So bear with me, because there's a lot. And I don't know if whomever can answer them can jump in and ask and answer as they see fit or best suited to respond. I think we know this, but just so we all know, it's right now currently $0 per year in tax revenue, correct? Okay, thank you. So, and what happens if the land isn't a project? I think I kind of heard that it becomes something other than a golf course. Mr. Armacost said that. Is that an accurate statement? If no project happens, what happens to the land?
Yep. As I said in my notes, we don't know. We have to think about what the long-term future would be. It could be green space. It could be another development.
Thank you. There was a mention about rezoning, and it started as one thing, it became another. Why is that so important, and how does that kind of address some concerns that we've heard tonight?
The original zoning was zoned as university district, which has very few limitations on it. The rezoning came in two parts, one for the northeast corner, and one for the southwest corner. And I forget the zoning.
B3 for the top tracer and R4 for the housing.
And R4.
But there actually is a third component where the golf course, the third component would actually be the golf course zoning. So that also went from university district to golf course, to designated as golf course.
And as a golf course zoning, it has to stay a golf course, correct?
Unless we, right, would have to come back and have another ask.
And the supermajority is 6 of 7, correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So there's been a lot of discussion, maybe some concern shared about what happens in the future if something gets sold to a tax exempt entity. What structures are in place to help prevent that?
That's probably Mr. Gosted, if you want to step up. it was going to go follow with the deed. It'd be in the title work. So you wouldn't be as simple as just collapsing an LLC. But Mr. Gosted, you're going to answer it much more eloquently.
We just got done doing development agreement with another pilot, and we put in a provision that called for after the pilot expired, whether it was early or at the natural term of it, the property had to stay in a taxable situation. If it didn't, for that period of time, if it's 10, 20 years afterwards, there was a representation of warranty from the developer. We'd be looking for the same thing here. If it didn't, there'd be terms and conditions to recover the tax savings that had occurred over the life of the pilot. And because I don't track when property gets transferred, we would then record something in the real estate records so that somebody that would buy it would notice that in their title search.
Thank you. There's a $3.5 million reimbursement from the Department of Transportation for golf course reconstruction. Is that an accurate number?
You know the numbers better than I.
3.1.
3.1.
Yes.
Okay. And what happens to that? That's a reimbursement, correct?
That's a reimbursement. The state would keep those funds if we did not move forward with the redevelopment.
Thank you. And as already mentioned in response to Mr. Bierke, it's a 40-year land lease.
40-year with 2 renewals for 10 years. So realistically, it's a 60-year.
And that 40 years, is that like a thou shalt do this no matter what guarantee sort of land lease, or are there provisions with clawbacks if it needs to be sold?
Like I said, the ground lease is currently not finalized. We've got a very extensive draft that has been put together and is currently under review between both parties. As far as specifics to a pilot, I don't know that there's anything in there where we demand that they do X, Y, Z. If there's failures, there are some black swan event, conversations that are in any lease. But that's there's nothing specifically as far as the tax abatement we'd require them to pay anything back.
Okay, thank you. And bear with me, there are questions to seek answers, obviously, and get things in the public record again. So the Top Tracer Golf will, in the best scenario, generate a net operating profit. Where does that money go if there's a net operating profit?
So, Mr. Clevin, from an operating profit standpoint, when Baker Tilly talked about a return on investment, we would need to see, that basic return on investment to cover the equity investment that folks made. But what we've discussed with UND conceptually, and we're still working through the details, is that if we were to make amounts of money more than what we anticipated, that there would be profit sharing between the development and the university, given the private-public partnership.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Clevin, can I ask one since Tom's there? What happens if they become insolvent, Tom? If the lessors become insolvent, what happens to the properties?
So there is language in there that's written in there. I'm sorry, I don't have all of that just rolled up in the back of my mind, but there are clauses. Couple things anytime 60 years is a long time, they may look to sell the project. We do have it noted there that it is one project. They would be unable to sell one without the other. It is a combined project. So it is one entity as far as being able to sell. Again, the lease is still in draft form. But that's currently what the university is pushing for. That's what we all have understood. But that's where that sits. In that black swan, there would be some different. There'd have to be conversations. That would be the absolute worst case scenario. But one cannot use that bad word. One cannot go bankrupt without the other. They have to continue to support each other to go through and. and move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Thank you, Mr. Clevin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there.
So the current draft, if I may, Dana, does have under a default that the any of the improvements would revert back to the University of North Dakota. And so one of the things when City Attorney Gosted brought up the clawback, and I'm speaking more from a university perspective than I am my own, if we lease it for 40 years or 60 years, you'll generate, absurd amounts of property tax, to be honest, and it'll be a great thing. If we were to default and it goes back to the University of North Dakota, you're going to have to work with UND on whether, that clawback is something that they are willing to pay, because as a state aid entity, that gets a little messier than just the private sector.
I guess one question on that, if you don't mind. I mean, you have bank financing. It does have a large equity. Certainly the Top Tracer is a larger equity stake than probably most of these projects, which I'm sure is based on the risk profile. But obviously there's going to be banks involved. It would likely end up in ownership of a bank before they aren't going to allow it to default, and then they're going to lose all their,
and that's another,
all their debt.
As we talk about a draft, that is maybe one shortcoming of the current draft, is there's not enough in between language right now that deals with how the bank would potentially step in between all of that. And so we're working through that with UND.
Yeah. What do they say? A normal golf course, it's like the third owner that finally makes money on the thing. So yeah.
I mentioned earlier that our idea of managing the course was not something we stepped into excitedly. It was something we stepped into to make the most of the situation.
Well, it's kind of third time around. So
yeah,
there you go. All right, Mr. Clevin, sorry for the interruptions, please.
No, I'm fine. A lot of them have already been asked and answered, and I don't want to monopolize time. So thank you for the time.
All right. Thank you. Don't worry, Ms. Osowski, it's coming. I'm just going to give our guests one more chance here before.
Well, I got to speak before she does.
Okay.
No,
Did
I'm
you have
kidding.
something else I was going to say?
Trying to add some levity.
Yeah. All right. Any other school board members, please? Ms. Flynn.
Appreciate the opportunity. I sort of hold the role as maybe the most senior school board member here, as Dr. Lund's not here, but have certainly seen a variety of these projects come through. So I didn't make the same promise to myself as Mr. Clevin did, and some people might regret inviting the school board given our history of length of meetings, but I think it's important to walk away with some facts, but also name maybe some of the conversations that I've heard my 10 years on the school board since we have been a part of the conversations of approving pilots and tax incentives. So I'll start with my questions. Mr. Clevin did a good job at asking some of the same ones I did. And then maybe I'll just end with some comments. Quick questions for you, President Armacost. Between 2016 and 2020, did anyone ask to purchase or develop the golf course when it was closed, to your awareness?
You know the history better than I do.
And actually some of that was before my time. I believe that the university did put out an RFI or an RFQ, I believe, for asking for somebody to come in and bring on a restaurant, lounge, and manage the golf course. We got 0 responses. I believe the second one had gone out for just restaurant and lounge, 0 responses. Because we believe that the clubhouse is under severe repair, and so we needed something to come and bring some life into that. That's why there's been a porta potty out there for a while. But we're certainly looking to change that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. It does. My point in asking that was to just merely articulate that certainly doesn't prohibit someone from doing that if the project didn't go through, but there's history there where the land wasn't being used for quite some time, and it would be reasonable to think that someone might have stepped forward if there was a development that could have been done. Question for the development piece, so this might be more for Steve. Are any of the apartments in the apartment building going to be owner occupied, or are they true rentals?
So Amber, right now we are planning to just do apartments, no condominiums.
Okay.
Sometimes there's people have talked about like VRBO, that model, and if you only rent it, have 50% occupancy, but you charge a much higher rate, can you do an offset there? And so I don't want to be misleading if some of the rooms ended up being VRBO instead of apartments, but that still would not address your concern about owner occupied.
Okay. I still have some questions for you, Steve.
Okay.
It's my understanding that you have a larger knowledge of some utilities than most. There was a question about a citizen that asked about the utility strain on the city. Can you talk about water infrastructure, electrical infrastructure? How is that being paid? And do you believe that that would cause a strain on the city more than usual?
Well, obviously, if the benchmark is the golf course and it's all greenscape except for the clubhouse, we are going to be seeing a little bit more water use and a little more wastewater generation, and we'll have a little more impervious area to manage storm, and there will be, slightly higher electrical demands, slightly higher natural gas demands associated with the whole development. But if you look at the type of development we're doing from the aspect of looking at it from a utility standpoint, we're way on the low end of all of the types of demands that you'd put, versus other things you could do where there would be, major water use, major wastewater discharge, major stormwater challenges. This is a pretty low impact improvement to those two corners. It's in an area where the city has quite a bit of capacity. So as we looked at it, oftentimes when we do a project, we find out, like when we did the new dormitories for UND, we looked at the shortest route to the storm sewer, and that storm sewer was really, really old and really, really small. And so as a result, we had to do some major things to our, deal with that. In this case, all of the utilities that are surrounding us, we don't have to do any major, the city doesn't, and we don't have to do any major improvements. It'll just be service connections.
Okay. There was a comment made about indoor golf simulators. Are these included in the project? And do you believe this project creates an unfair advantage to existing businesses of the like?
So it's first and foremost an outdoor driving range. We do, however, have, inclement weather in Grand Forks, and unlike Fargo, we are planning to put garages like you see on many of the bars now where they can open and close that garage door. And we will have technology inside the building to continue to use it during the course of a really inclement weather. From a competition standpoint, we responded to what UND asked us to put in there, and we're, simply trying to do the best job we can to be responsive to that.
Okay. There was talk about, a citizen comment was made about this is not affordable housing. At any time has this project ever been described as an affordable housing project?
I understand the wants to have that, and we're seeing, if you look at the various apartments that are on board now, quite a few of them are targeting that. In this particular case, that wasn't what we were asked to do, and that was never our objective.
Okay. This may be for a question for the developer and possibly the city. But are there, we're talking about some housing conversations right now, and some of the topics that have been brought up is there's maybe some policy or city code issues that may prevent certain developments from doing things the way they want to do things. To your knowledge, are there any city code issues or variances that could change that would make the cost of the project more affordable or come down that we could work with the city to talk about?
It's like a free opportunity, and I can't even think of anything. All joking aside, because of how routine these are, we're going to provide parking, but I think we want to provide parking just like the city demands us to provide parking for both the commercial and the residential. Otherwise, there's not a lot of twists to this that I would see that are, creating any barriers for us.
I think the one thing that the developers agreed to in UND is they could build this more densely. They could put more units on this site, and they've agreed to, and when they talked about the 300 units versus the 100 50 units?
69.
69 units. So they could build this more dense, and they've determined not to do that, to be more neighborly. And so the code would allow you to put more units on that site, and they've agreed to put less units on that site.
And that does, there's been a hint toward UND subsidy, but the goal of President Armacost, rightfully so, was to get 500,000 down to zero. As we approach this negotiation with him for a land lease and a development agreement for the golf course, UND is anticipating that they will still have to pay a portion of that 500,000 because of that loss of density. If we would have had those other 131 units, we could have got much closer to zero.
Okay. I think that's all I have for some questions. I might have a couple more during some of my comments, so thank you. There was some comments about why are we here and why have we been invited to the table. I think this is a great example of a collaborative approach that we've been talking about and asking for as taxing entities. We sort of sit in our own chambers and maybe take passive jabs to each other at some points, respectfully. But I think at the end of the day, the reason why the school board is here is because we have a responsibility for one of the most vulnerable populations in the city, which is our children. And it's not a fact that it's not a lie that we've had some budgetary constraints for a variety of reasons. And the way that I personally look at this is what will be the impacts of us deciding no and what will be the impacts of us deciding yes that will end up benefiting our children. At the end of the day, I think it is accurate that it's zero right now and we're not getting anything. And so if we're just operating off of facts, I think there's a variety of facts that could support this project. However, there's a lot of optics and opinions that have added themselves to the conversation about tax incentive financing or pilot projects over the course of 10 years that I've been having conversations about these. So I'm just going to name them because I think transparency is good, but it also suffices the citizen comments on the Facebook interwebs, the Herald, or those who show up. So first and foremost, I think the comments that I've heard, the comments that maybe our board has talked about, is the Baker Tilly assessment. I think Baker Tilly did a wonderful job tonight about discussing the project. I think for some people, a lot of what they discuss is over our heads financially, but at the end of the day, I am aware that the process, even 5 years ago with Baker Tilly, was probably less than what it is now. And I had an issue with it less than. I think at that time, it was maybe done by less individuals or at a lesser cost. And so it didn't allow for more time to dig into the pro forma and the inputs. And so I think understanding what that role is and knowing that their assessment is probably carries more weight and validity is important. Previous adjustments have been made to asks that weren't previously available. And so when we have conversations with some of developers and they say, we cannot do this project, it is unaffordable for us to do that, it's really hard to gain the trust of the public taxing entities then when they come back to the city and they go from 100% pilot to getting a 5% tax incentive from the city. And so I think that just needs to be named, that has happened in the past, and that is a struggle for some people to get over. And so if there's any questions related to how do we get over that, let's ask the questions. Because we're sitting up here with a group of individuals who are well prepared. This is probably the most well prepared conversation that we've had with a developer in all of the projects that we've seen, at least the ones that I've seen. So there have been projects before us that have come back and changed. So how did that happen? Was it a result of the city negotiating on behalf of the school district and the county commission? Potentially, but we're here now. We're here to have these conversations. We're here to be collaborative. Lastly, people can say it's the same developers. They make a conglomeration of different LLCs with different people involved. Let's name that. It's public record. You can go and look up who's in these LLCs. At the end of the day, if these people who likely have money did not step forward, developments wouldn't happen. I'm appreciative that people who do have money or who make a living step forward and say, I'm going to add to the value of the community. It is what it is, right? So I think at the end of the day, the solution that has been provided as to another option for doing this project is that we go to alumni and get donors. When I ask people, what is your other solution for some of these projects? And some of the projects I have voted no for. But if I ask someone, what is your other solution? A lot of times, the only thing I hear is I fundamentally disagree with giving large tax breaks to people with money or developers, which I share in a lot of my personal thinking. But at the end of the day, no one else has provided a solution. We have a solution to go from 0 to 10. In my opinion, it's one worth considering. Additionally, one of the things that I saw on here that I don't think is talked about is what are the benefits I see as a school district. What people didn't see on there, or maybe you did, is there's an entire walking path that did not exist before within however many block radius. It adds to our walkable city. It adds to the health and behavioral wellness of our city. It wasn't there before, and it's providing an opportunity for not only our kids to get from a section of town potentially to another area, but it also adds value to that neighborhood. We talked about hospitality education. We have a new CTE center, which is a great example of a partnership that has business students, that has students looking in hospitality, that has students that are taking physical education requirements for a state requirement for our curriculum. Those opportunities do exist with some of our other entities, but can exist in a different way or can supplement some of our already existing opportunities. We've benefited greatly as a school district from having partnerships with the Fritz Pollard Center that UND has graciously partnered with us on with our students, and Albrecht Field as another example. I think this could be an opportunity for our students to use this facility, and Mr. Beering did a great job of articulating maybe what they do in Fargo as well. I think at the end of the day, we can all disagree on anything. I like to operate on the facts. I certainly will be making a decision based on what is in the best interest of the school district and what will help our budget. Certainly, collecting $0 for the next 20 years is not something that I think is appropriate for the school district. And if we can consider any revenue, we should. I'm appreciative of the partnership. I think that there's further conversation to be had. Those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. Did John set this up so Rebecca was right next to Terry? I'm just wondering. If that
This
was
is
set up
my
that way.
normal seat.
I know.
I
Terry
sit
sat
here
right
every
this?
week.
This is the far right, my friend.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, right here.
Has there ever been someone further right than you, though, Terry?
Only further would be off over sitting over there.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to Rebecca if there's nobody else from the school district or county that wants to make a comment at this time. So.
Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Wasowski,
I
please.
will, I have one question, and I'm going to keep my comments really short. We heard this whole presentation last night. I'm really disappointed that we are here again today. To what Ms. Flynn said, I think you guys have always been at the table. Just because we're holding our meetings separately and we're getting, presentations from the same, it should be their job to go and sell these entities. We shouldn't have to get around like this. I struggle with hearing this presentation twice, 2 days in a row, because some entities state that they are not given enough information. Anyways, moving on. I have one question and then I have comments, but I will make it quick. What are the names of the investors? Exactly who are the investors? We keep hearing about them. Who are they?
So, Ms. Wasowski, we have not finalized that.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
I'm just.
So on any project, you get to the point where is it a go or is it a no-go? And we've invested tremendous resources already as a development team, getting to the point where we're at right now, if we were successful in working through the zoning process, we're now working on the incentive process. If the incentive process is successful, then we will finalize where our equity comes from. And I'm not being evasive at all.
No,
I do think that if you look at some of the principles of some of the firms that are participating, is it likely to assume that they will make moderate investments in things? I think that's fair to say. So if I'm Steve Burrian and I'm the president and CEO of Burrian Associates, may I show up as a moderate investor in equity? I think that's fair to say. Do I have enough coffee cans buried in the backyard to cover all of the equity? I don't.
At this point, or, any time in the future, will there be any type of foreign investment in this project?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's really the only questions that I have. So I'll make my speech short. First off, I really like the project. I think it's wonderful. I think that Mr. Armourcost and UND really put in the time and effort to help accommodate some of the requests of, their neighbors. And I do think that UND is being a good neighbor to the residents of that general area of town. And so thank you, Mr. Armourcost. It is a beautiful project. It's the tax incentive that I have an issue with. I voted for the zoning because I do hope that this is built here. But one thing that really bothers me is I feel like a lot of us get mixed up in a tax incentive and a pilot, and they're different. These are two different agreements. And so here we are interchanging the word tax incentive and pilot. And if you go back and read North Dakota Century Code, it does state, that to qualify for a tax incentive between years 6 and 10, that it has to be a primary sector business from the state of North Dakota. And, earlier today, I asked this question yesterday, I asked about the projects that were built using this type of, tax incentive, like bypassing the primary sector business. And, earlier the mayor stated that it was used 48 times in Fargo. But what are those projects? I have not heard of a single project within the state of North Dakota, that's a fun project. I know golf courses, a majority of them, or they can be nonprofit, but I don't think that a tax incentive was used to help build Sweet Shots in Fargo. I don't think if I wanted to build a go-kart track that I would qualify for a tax incentive. I think that now we're pushing the line. Even I don't agree that apartment buildings are primary sector businesses either. They may help the primary sector businesses, but they're not a primary sector business. And I definitely do not think that a Sweet Shots or a Trace Golf, I have it in my notes somewhere. Regardless, I do not believe that it is a primary sector business and it qualifies for any type of tax incentive. And also it states that tax incentives, can basically go up to 10 years in North Dakota Century Code. But a pilot can be issued for up to 20 years. Now, the best example that I like to use as a pilot is, just say we have a state park, here within our community, and, those are obviously exempt from paying taxes. But, sometimes the county or the city may, help plow the roads, maybe even help build the roads. And so those pilots, a payment in lieu of taxes, then an agreement can be made between, the non-paying entity and the city so that those services are covered and they're not just a burden on the taxpayer, the plowing of the roads and things like that. That's just a general example. And so I really question, my biggest thing on this is the legality of this. This is not a primary sector business. We are interchangeably using pilots and tax incentives when they should be two separate agreements. We should have a tax incentive agreement first, and it clearly states in North Dakota Century Code that those can only go up to 10 years. And if you even go back and look at any pilot that was issued by any tax incentive and pilot that were issued from the city of Grand Forks before about 3 or 4 years ago, probably before Memorial Village 1 and 2. Simplot was the last one and they got 10 years, but they are a primary sector business and they were within 10 years. And so I have a hard time believing that we are properly using these tax incentives and pilots to go out and build things like a Sweet Shots. I don't think that qualifies if you actually go and read North Dakota Century Code. I'm not sure how many people have actually gone and read it, but it says, right here in 40-57.1-03 that the governing body of the municipality must have received a certificate from the Department of Commerce stating that they're a primary sector business. And I haven't seen one yet. And it states that is required for years 6 through 10 on the tax incentive part. I have not read anything in North Dakota Century Code that states that a tax incentive can be given for up to 20 years. It states a pilot can, a payment in lieu of taxes. And so I disagree that we are following North Dakota Century Code when it comes to some of these. And I really think that we do need to reach out to Wrigley and have him give a legal opinion. I mean, we're all here, I know that the school board and the county have denied some recent pilots, but if we actually had guidance from our state who take care and monitor our North Dakota Century Code, I would be willing to come into some of these things and be like, nope, they qualify. Good for you guys. Ultimately, I would like to see property tax removed from everybody. I don't think anybody should be paying property taxes. I think it's unconstitutional, but we are. And if we eliminated property taxes in the whole state of North Dakota, they wouldn't even be coming up here and asking for some of these tax incentives and some of these pilot programs. And so I would really like, us as a community of Grand Forks, the school board, the county, and the city council to actually try to get some kind of interpretation out of Mr. Wrigley to tell us what direction we should really go. Because at this point, when I read North Dakota Century Code, a Sweet Shots doesn't qualify for a tax incentive, and I don't think it qualifies for a pilot. And so that's my whole situation. If Wrigley comes back and says, nope, golf simulator, Sweet Shots, and apartment buildings 100% qualify for a tax incentive and a pilot, then I would feel more comfortable moving on. But we haven't heard that yet. And I would like to know what the 48 times Fargo used these programs for, because I don't think it was on Sweet Shots. I don't think it was on go-karts. I don't think it was on mini golf. Most likely they're being used. I know recently they've done some apartments, which the citizens have started to push back on. But for the most part, they're being used for primary sector businesses, which is the way that the North Dakota Century Code has been written. And so I think that it would be best if we could get some kind of interpretation from Wrigley, and I think I would feel a lot more comfortable moving on. And I hope all of you actually take the time to read North Dakota Century Code. It's not that long. It's a couple pages, it's really not that bad. I see 6 pages when it talks about tax incentives, and it's chapter 40-57.1. tax exemptions. And so I hope everybody goes out and does their own research, not expecting people to spoon feed them the information. But I really would like to get some kind of clarification that we, as the leaders of this community, are doing what is truly right. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osowski. Just a couple things I'll add. I should have read the next line in this report. So 48 pilots, tax exemptions, TIFs, And the approved projects range, this is Fargo we're talking about, range from primary sector to low-income housing to market rate housing and commercial redevelopments. But planning can definitely get you that list. They're going to get it directly from Fargo. Mr. Gosta, if you could step up to the mic.
While he's coming up, Mayor, I just want to point out that the RDO building in downtown Fargo that has the Jasper Hotel, that's mostly retail and office space, also got a 5-year Renaissance zone coupled with a 15-year pilot.
There's one of the 48. Mr. Gosta, your analysis, did that come from Attorney General opinion?
It came from my review of legislative history starting in 1969. Every change in the statute, I pulled the statute, the House bill, the Senate bill, reviewed the legislative history, reviewed the Attorney General's opinions. I've had experience in seeking Attorney General's opinions, and when there's an opinion that has been issued that's on point, that gives the direction, the Attorney General, in my experience, has not offered up another opinion to differ from what's been issued.
Do you have an example of that recently?
I do.
I know that, so why don't you tell us? Because I wasn't very happy about that. So
we all recognize the softball.
Yeah,
Mayor.
exactly. But I think it's an important point because it galvanizes exactly what you're saying. We had asked for an Attorney General opinion if we could eliminate property taxes for primary residents. And what did we get back from the Attorney General?
We had offered up that we had thought that there had been a significant change in the law from an Attorney General's opinion that was probably 15, 20 years old. And the response that I got, and this was from a case that I was involved with at the North Dakota Supreme Court, litigated it and thought it changed the law. And the Attorney General concluded it did not under the set of circumstances and the question that we had posed. And he decided not to provide an opinion that differed from what had already been in existence.
Okay, thank you for that. You can sit back down unless anyone's got a question for Mr. Gostad.
I just have a comment to follow up with Mr. Standy. With the 5-year tax incentive, that fits. And pilots are allowed to go up to 20 years. And so what you're talking about really does meet North Dakota Century Code. So because I'm talking, it says years 6 through 10, they have to be a primary sector business. But you're talking about a 5-year tax
They did a
incentive.
5-year Renaissance zone.
Well, that's a
and
different program,
Then
though.
years 6 through 20 were a pilot.
But a pilot is different than a tax incentive.
I'm trying to understand how you think any of those businesses are primary sector.
I don't think any of them
but they
are.
got the pilot. That's the point.
Well, the only opinion that we're relying
you
on
guys
is
can work on
Gosta.
that afterwards. We're going to stick to comments and keep this a little bit tighter. Ms. Flynn, do you have a comment, please?
I have 2 comments. The first one is I think providing an intermediary solution instead of waiting for a state office that could take however many years to give an opinion is, I don't know, Commissioner Hagan, if you've asked Ms. Wamstead for her opinion. Certainly it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for us to rely on Mr. Gostad. I write real estate contracts for a living, but I don't pretend to be an attorney or interpret North Dakota Century Code. And, certainly the school district could ask for the opinion of their attorney as well. And so if those opinions match, then why would there be a need for us to go to the state's attorney? Certainly that's a solution that would probably be a little bit quicker than going to the state's attorney.
Okay.
Or
Since neither of us
Attorney General.
should be making that request, and since
Yeah.
Ms. Wamsted's here, I will defer to Ms.
Thank you.
Madam Chair Hagan to see if she has any interest in requesting such a response.
I would love for Ms. Wamstead to come up here and give her opinion. Thank you.
You were hoping just sit in the back and mind your own business.
Is this on? Okay. I was saying I was a good Lutheran, got the back row, could sneak out easily, but then I get called on at the end. So, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Hagan, Ms. Bakke, members of all the boards, thank you for being here today and for all the information. I have had an opportunity to review the Century Code relevant to pilots. I have also reviewed the legislative history and the corresponding Attorney General's opinions that Mr. Gosted referenced. I have come to the same legal conclusion as Mr. Gosted. I don't believe that in order to issue a pilot that it has to be a primary sector business. I fully recognize that on initial reading of the Century Code, it's very confusing how the statute is written. I don't fault individuals for their initial glance thinking that that is a requirement, but when you go through that legislative history and those Attorney General opinions that have been issued, I think this fits within the parameters of the law for a pilot incentive to be issued. And really, it's a policy decision for each of your respective boards rather than a legal issue.
Thank you, Ms. Wamstead, and Ms. Flynn.
Just had my
phenomenal
last-
idea.
Yeah, my last
You get
comment.
an A+ on that one if I was a school teacher. There you go.
My last comment was I just wanted to acknowledge that while the main item on the agenda is the Ray Richards development, the general impetus for why we're all here is really a conceptual idea from you, Mr. Mayor, as it's important for us to get together and talk about generalities and sort of these vague approaches to how our boards approach these together. And so I just want to acknowledge that, yes, maybe the city council has heard this twice, but the school district can't weigh in on a 5-year tax incentive when it doesn't come to our body. And there's certainly information that might be pertinent in how you guys make your decision. And so to involve us all together is important. I just want to acknowledge the spirit of why we're here also.
Thank you. And I know Chair Hagan also was involved in sort of drafting this, and I don't expect the school board to watch every city council meeting. I'm not going to watch every school board meeting. I'm sorry. Sorry, Ms. Bakke. Maybe they're going to get more interesting with you there. And I'm definitely not going to watch every county meeting as well, because you can't even find those. You guys just finally started putting them online. But
We're
anyway.
in the century now.
All right. I appreciate that. And I do think it'll be effective going forward. Anytime we can get our groups together, I think that's a good thing, whether we agree or disagree. I mean, look at this event, so to speak, that we've got tonight. A lot of people are here from all the boards that can make it. And, there'll be conversations after that will be just as valuable. So I think that's great. I don't think we need to end on that, but is there any other comments for this evening? Anyone would like to offer? President Sandy.
Just one quick, Ms. Flynn did mention earlier that there had been a pilot that came forward earlier. They asked for a 20-year, 100%. And then ultimately the dynamics and the numbers changed, and it ended up being a 5-year, 100% pilot that was awarded. I think it's important to note a couple things. First of all, I don't like when it's reported or when developers come to us and say, I want a 75-year, 5 billion or 0%, because they don't get to decide what sort of pilot or tax increment financing or any sort of a tax incentive they get. We actually get to decide what they get. So if and when the developers come forward, in the past, often they've said, I think I'm going to need 20 years and 100%, or I think I'm going to need 15 years and 80% for this to pencil out. It doesn't really matter what they think, but often it gets printed in the paper or in the staff reports. The developers are asking for this, they're asking for that. Ultimately, it's what Baker Tilly comes back to us with that is ended up being presented and or approved by our body. So it doesn't really matter what the developers are asking for. What actually matters is what the financial review says. Secondly, specific to that pilot request that came forward, the fact of the matter was when it appeared that there was going to be pushback and they might not get I think it was 20-year 80%, when it looked like they weren't going to get approval for that, they did dig out. They went out and hit the street and dug around and found some additional financing, which is why they didn't have to have the pilot for that extensive period of time. They could pencil it out at 5 years. So the financing changed, the financing package changed, which is why the whole concept changed. It wasn't that one day they wanted 20 years and 80%, and the next day they could make it work at 100% in 5 years. The financing changed. I think that's important to know. Thank you, Amber, for bringing that up.
Mr. Veen, please.
Okay, it's getting late, but I do want to end with a couple of quick comments. The interesting thing about this project is in my ward, and I represent the people that are here. A number of them have just left now. I think they got a little bit. It's gotten late and long.
That's why you waited to talk. Huh? Sorry, it was too easy.
But
please.
But it's the general consensus of those. There many are for. There's a number that are against. They want to preserve a golf course. That somehow we've got to figure out a way that this golf course remains there. There's a lot of interest on where it is and the location. You can see how it's evolved. The concessions the university has made has brought us closer to that. The ability to get the zoning was a major, for me, win, because that then took it out of a university district and made it into a golf course district, basically, that assured that the golf course was going to be there. That was if it can be viable. If it's not viable, it could be zoned as a golf course and be nothing. It could go back to where it was in whatever it was, 2016 or 18, and that was a disaster. So somehow we got to all figure out how we can make this happen and be able to deliver a golf course that's there to serve. If you look at it, the new layout versus the old, we still have a basic 9-hole golf course. It's got a few shots less, I guess, than what we had before. The driving range is now a Top Golf, or whatever that described with that. We're enhancing the Division I aspects of a building that can be there. It's going to have some recreational factors to it, I guess, for eating and support, and also a much reduced housing. I think that those constituents, especially in the townhouse, really pushed hard to get this back to something that would still give them that visualness that they thought they had when they first bought it, and would maintain that. So I think I want us to keep that in mind, because this is the choices we have can impact if that can ever happen. And I've talked to a few people before. I've had a closeness to this golf course. Back in the day, I ran cross country on this course back in 1972, when this was just starting to be a golf course. And I've seen it evolve and grow. I mean, I'll tell you what, the cross country runners used to plant the trees that went on this course to make it happen. It was painful to see the trees go down with the road project, but it is inevitable. Change is going to happen. So how do we embrace that change and figure out a way to pull this forward? So that's the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veen. That was a few years back, but well done. Well done. Planted the trees yourself. That's impressive. Well, if anyone else wants to beat Mr. Veen's comments, otherwise we would think it's a great place to wrap it up. So I know do we have adjournment on the agenda? I know we do. So Miss Oselski, do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment.
Got a motion to adjourn. Who's our second? Miss Berg. We got it lined up there. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.